solid niggas left, but it's not enough. Few bitches that'll really step, but it's not enough. Say you bigger than myself, but it's not enough. I get on their ass, yeah, somebody gotta do it. I made them niggas mad, yeah, somebody gotta do it. I ain't the G bad, yeah, watch a nigga do it. We survived outside, all from the music, nigga, what? They like, what he on? This the Alpha and Omega, bitch, welcome home. This is not a song, this is a revelation, how to get a nigga gone. I need you a man, baby, I don't understand, baby. Pay a bill and make you feel protected like I can, baby. Teach you something if you need correction, that's the plan, baby. Don't put your life in this weird nigga's hands, baby. Whoa! It's not enough. Few solid niggas left, but it's not enough. Few bitches that'll really step, but it's not enough. Say you bigger than myself, but it's not enough. I get on their ass, yeah, somebody gotta do it. I made them niggas mad, yeah, somebody gotta do it. I take the G pad, yeah, watch a nigga do it. We survived outside, all from the music, nigga, what? Hey, turn this TV off. Ain't with my type activities, then don't you get involved. Hey, look, how many shit I see, send them off. Take a risk or take a trip, you know I'm tripping for my dog. Who you with? Couple sergeants and routines for the get back. This revolution been televised, I fell through with the knickknacks. Hey, young nigga, get your chili up. Yeah, I meant that. Hey, black out, if they act out. Yeah, I did that. Hey, what's up, though? I hate a bitch that's hating on a bitch and they both hoes. I hate a nigga hating on them niggas and they both broke. If you ain't coming for no chili, what you come for? Nigga feel like he entitled cause he knew me since a kid. Bitch, I cut my granny off and she don't see it how I see it. Got a big mouth, but he lack big ideas. Send him to the moon, that's just how I feel. Yeah, then it's not enough. Few solid niggas left, but it's not enough. Few bitches that'll really step, but it's not enough. Say you bigger than myself, but it's not enough. But somebody gotta do it. Got my foot up on the gas, but somebody gotta do it. Turn this TV off, turn this TV off. 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 Ain't no other king in this rap thing, they siblings. Nothing for my children. One shot, they disappearing. I'm in a city with a flag be getting thrown like it was past interference. Padlock around the building. Crash pulling up in no more trucks.
Nothing changes. All I want is a moment to think clearly, but thoughts come unrelenting, consuming every waking moment. My mind binds me and I can't escape. I shout for help, but no one hears me. One day I feel I'll just disappear. Lost in this chaos, I'm searching for peace.
Yo, welcome. We are here. It is the boys, the WCW Trios champions. We are back. Who's the third man? We have him right here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Bash at the Beach 1996. You don't have to be at the Ocean Center in Daytona Beach, Florida on July the 7th, 1996. You are here with us, your boys, at Dirt Sheet Radio, talking all about the WCW event that we all love. This is the one that changed not only pro wrestling, but also pop culture. We're talking Bash at the Beach 1996. But hey, I got to go through and talk with my fellow tag team champions. First and foremost, this is the Bash at the Beach, but we also got the Robby at the Beach. Introduce yourself, my man.
Robby's back once again with the WCW boys. It's been such a long time since I've been on a WCW podcast, but damn it, I'm back, and I knew I had to be back for one of the most historic moments in professional wrestling history in revealing the third man. I can't wait to get in it. Let's go.
Absolutely, and we can't talk about a third man without our third man. Of course, the glue that holds this together, a Mr. Birthday Boy, perhaps? Ladies and gentlemen, Mack Burns.
Hey guys, I am here, and I don't think Nick had any doubt what show I was going to pick when he gave me the birthday choice. He was like, I think I have an idea, and then I completely non-surprised him by saying Bash at the Beach 1996, where a beep becomes the third man.
Ooh, there's a lot of possible options on here. And I am Nick LaRocco, also known as @NeekDown. So follow me on Instagram there. And you can also find me throughout the Dirt Sheet Radio Facebook page. Follow me there as well. Love talking with you guys. And I love being able to talk to all of you guys here alongside my boys. This is what we do. We love to do this. And real quick, I just want to go around the horn. And I want to see what this pay-per-view means to you guys. Because so many people talk about this as being one of the ultimate professional wrestling shows. So, Mac, you're the birthday boy. You chose this. I want you to be the first one to talk about what this pay-per-view event means to you.
So, I mean, I was 14 when when Scott Hall jumped the rail in his finest Canadian tuxedo, and grabbed the microphone and said that, you want a war? Well, you got one, and I mean, everybody and their mother thought that WWF was invading WCW. Nobody really knew about contract talks back then and everything. And I don't think news of the curtain call had even leaked out yet because, there was grainy video. Nobody really knew what was going on. There was no internet yet. So it was all word of mouth and Mean Gene's hotline and stuff like that.
1-900-909-9900.
Yeah. But, yeah, man. And then the next week when Nash came in and not saying their names, which was crazy up until Hogan says their names at the in the final promo, is just nuts, man. Like, it was just like it just felt like a hostile takeover. It kind of felt like if WCW had played it right, we might be still talking about WCW nowadays. But in true WCW fashion, they fumbled it, and it only took about 2 years to fumble it, but the significance of this show in history is where everything changed. Everything became more real. Everything became like reality-based. It wasn't cartoony anymore. It wasn't, it wasn't Duke the Dumpster Drosy. It wasn't Bastion Booger. It wasn't Doink the Clown. These were two guys that were running roughshod over WCW in that infamous Nitro episode where they were backstage beating up everybody and sending people to the hospital, and the people on the MGM lot were calling the police because they thought it was real. Rey Mysterio getting lawn darted into the trailer. Like, it was just something that we had never seen out of WCW before, and it really revolutionized booking at the time. Because you couldn't have booked these guys better. You couldn't have booked this angle better. And hey, Donnie, thanks a lot, buddy. And it just all clicked. Like, this entire show clicked.
Yeah.
And I felt like, even though they were talking about the third man throughout the show, it didn't take away from anything else on the show. It was the through line through the entire show, but it didn't take away anything. They made everybody in here feel important, and that's what I liked. Up until the greatest 5-minute promo in the history of professional wrestling, I would say. I took kind of points off for the New World Organization, but we'll talk about that later. But Rob, what were your overall thought? Maybe you weren't alive. I don't know. How old are you, Rob?
I'm actually 23, so I wasn't alive. But however,
you weren't alive, yeah.
At this point in time, when you go over anybody that was my age in history, or wasn't even born yet, or even now who is starting to get into professional wrestling as a whole, you always will hear about Bash at the Beach 1996. To me, this pay-per-view is what really solidified that WCW was coming for the WWF. This pay-per-view was the shot heard around the world when we were talking about the ending. And the historical context of what this event meant to every fan out there who was currently alive then, or in Mack's case was 14 years old, or even
right in my wheelhouse,
or even now as someone who was born in 2001 when the company had folded. It is one of the biggest events of all time, and this is what really kicked that Monday Night War off. This is what really started WCW into going down into 83 weeks, beating Monday Night Raw, And also, as Mack had also pointed out, the historical context of how this changed professional wrestling forever. Everyone in every interview and documentary that has talked about the main event into that 5-minute promo, that there is what changed the landscape of what professional wrestling is, where it was all out of the cartoony gimmicks and becoming more reality based, which thanks also to ECW, even though they weren't really nationalized yet, they were using that stuff as well. But however, Eric Bischoff knew it was time to go to the reality-based stuff because that's what people were digging for at that point. It was the grunge rock era. Everybody was looking for edginess, and the New World Order is what essentially was that caveat. But as Max said, the event itself, from when we talk about the opener all the way to the finish, it was a good way to present your talents. And however, too, this whole show in whole, for anyone who is trying to get into wrestling or doesn't know about Bash at the Beach, we're going to give you the reasons why you should go on Peacock or go find an old VHS tape somewhere from your parents or your grandparents and watch this pay-per-view, because this is what made the Attitude Era, and this is what made the Monday Night Wars solidified.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned, finding the VHS tape. I went through and found my VHS tape of this event. And, I was fortunate enough to have been able to be a youngster growing up to be able to enjoy this. And, for me, I watched through, and that tape has seen better days, but I have watched this event top to bottom so many times, and it's without a doubt one of my all-time favorite events. And I think so many people say that, you're not watching this like you are, a lot of other wrestling shows. You're not going to have repeated 10-star matches, right? They're not technical masterpieces necessarily, but it's just the historical context and the importance to this whole show, top to bottom, for what it does for professional wrestling. Of course, you got the hostile takeover match. That, without a doubt, is history making and history defining. But you can look at so many other areas, like the Four Horsemen's emphasis throughout this show. You've also got the dawn of the cruiserweights with a tremendous opener that still to this day people are talking about. And when you think about when this took place, this was absolutely a very revolutionary opening match of Psychosis and Rey Mysterio. And we are going to talk all about that very, very soon. Usually we tend to open these events with going into the main event, but this is one that we got to save there, right, for the very end there. So, fellas, I don't know if you guys are ready, but I would love to go through some quick bits of news that connect to this pay-per-view, and I want to be real fast about it, but because there's a lot to go through, but there's a lot of stuff that went in.
By quick, do you mean 4 pages of notes, Nick?
Yeah, that's why I want to rapid fire through this stuff. Oh, man. And a lot of this, too, we're going to be looking as well. I deep dove so many old forums. Thank you, Internet Archive, for existing to find what people were thinking, who that third man was going to be. And one of the biggest points I want to say, the vast majority of people were not expecting a Mr. Terry Bollea at all. That's Superman. How are we supposed to think that Superman would turn evil? So,
Nick, I would like to I'd like to personally thank you, Nick, for you're never taking a pinfall in our tag team matches. It's always going to be me and Robby. You always do the most amount of work here, man.
Thank you. I always love my pinfall, guys. Thank you for making.
You're going to be the
strong.
Aleister Black of our trios.
Of the trio, yeah.
That must be on Buddy Matthews.
I'm gonna walk out now and go to the other company.
And not take a pinfall there either.
I'm not gonna take a pinfall there. There's gonna be a lot of rumors. All right. I did a lot of talking there, so let's get right into this. I needed to make sure I'm ready to go. One of the biggest things we talk about rumored third men. One of them I saw very prevalently. The Ultimate Warrior. Now, around this time frame, Warrior has been missing shows throughout June in the WWF. So much so that at this time he's being buried on TV, and people backstage were already assuming that he was fired. This fueled a lot of speculation that he was going to be the third man, and Warrior himself was claiming that he only missed the shows due to the death of his father, and he was still under contract. A lot of people in WWF were very unhappy with these rumors because, while they're not the biggest fans of Warrior, if Warrior was to do anything and come right back into the good graces, should he be released, they all know that he would have been treated like a king. Guys, did any of you see Ultimate Warrior as a potential third guy?
No, and here's another thing too. Listening to the Deadlock podcast, shout out to the boys.
Ooh.
They also mentioned in one of their WCW reviews that people were pissed at the Warrior for missing shows due to the death of his father, but he had never had a relationship with his father.
Right.
And they found out that his father had died years earlier, so he was lying.
As the Warrior would.
So, yeah, but no, I never saw the Ultimate Warrior. My thoughts were always going to be it was one of the guys in the match that was going to turn. I always thought it was going to be either Macho Man, Lex Luger, or Sting that was going to turn and join them. But so that was that. Even when I was like 14, I was like, oh, it's going to be one of them because it's 3-on-2, and then one guy will turn during the match, and it'll be a handicap match the other way. But it was never the Warrior.
Right.
Yeah, and then add on to that, in all honesty, making the Ultimate Warrior the third man, that is the most unbelievable thing you could do. Eric Bischoff being the third man at that time was more believable because you couldn't find him on the show at all at that point.
Yeah.
So the other mystery.
So at that point, when I first watched Bash at the Beach, that's who I was thinking would have been the third man when I was a kid. It had to be Eric Bischoff because at that point, Eric Bischoff was already the Raw GM and he was a complete a-hole when I was growing up watching it and when I first watched Bash at the Beach. So for my intellectual, it was more like, okay, it has to be Eric Bischoff doing this. Because at that point, we knew that he was the WCW president. He could have been the one to bring in Hall and Nash. So having Eric Bischoff being a third man is more believable than an Ultimate Warrior. And honestly, I'll also add on to Mack's fact on this. I honestly thought that would have been, in my personal opinion, would have been Macho Man. Because Macho Man has turned heel before. When he was in the WWF in the 80s, he started as a heel who then got over. So having Macho Man being that heel with the Uzi Machismo, it would have been more believable than just having Ultimate Warrior. Because at that time, Ultimate Warrior wasn't going to turn heel for nobody. Because back then, when we take the context on what a heel was back in the 90s, if you were a heel, that meant you were going to be taking a pay cut out of your merchandising sales. That meant you were going to make less money than you were being a babyface, because the faces at the time were the ones getting the hot merchandise sales, which meant a big paycheck. If you were a heel, you were losing that money.
Exactly. And, Ultimate Warrior just being the third guy, it feels like such a faraway thought when you think about how cool, how awesome, how, quiet and controlled Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were in comparison. Like, there's no way he would have fit that mold of that type of cool invader. But again, we got a lot more suspects, and we're going to get to them shortly. But, real quick, we might have talked about this off the air. We might have talked about this at the start of the show. But Conan is going to be dropping the U.S. title as a punishment for going off on fans at a New York house show after the fans chanted EC Dub and You Still Suck at the K-Dog, forcing him
I remember this.
Yeah, he grabs a microphone, trashes the fans, and it got so heated that Kevin Sullivan has to then break character, grab a microphone, and apologize to the fans in attendance while saying nice things about ECW, and then saying that Conan's opinions do not reflect those of WCW.
I remember that. Oh my God, I remember reading that at the time.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that was the reason why he lost it to legs all the way up on the top rope Ric Flair pin.
Yo, that extension was wild. I got all blurry all of a sudden. Usually when I put my patented neck fan on, that fixes things. But hey, while I'm...
fancy man for a fancy podcast.
Fancy's fancy.
Gotta get ready for this one. I spared no expense on this, guys. But then, we go into more talk with Dave Meltzer. A source on the set of Hogan's movie said Hogan was on a phone call with Eric Bischoff and a Mr. Rowdy Piper discussing plans for the future, including an idea for Hogan to be the third man. Now, the big thing here, I never heard about Piper's involvement, especially this early, because he hasn't even shown up yet. He just shows up at Halloween Havoc. And when you think about it, though, and the time it takes to, get through all of the contract signing process and your physicals and all of whatever Piper was doing, it makes sense that they started their negotiations and talks this early, leading up to October. And we're gonna get to that aspect in October as well. If any of you guys, by the way, have something to throw out there, feel free to interrupt me. I'm just gonna go through more of these. Dave Meltzer. Now we're going to be looking at some of Meltzer's predictions. He was thinking Lex Luger is the most likely third man, and I had to agree with him there because when you think about it, all of last year, Luger was just kind of playing both sides. He was happily ready to betray Randy Savage whenever it was convenient, such as when he was willing to betray Savage when they came out to save Hogan at Halloween Havoc 95. Which is when,
Lex Luger was one of those guys that was ready to turn heel at the drop of a dime. Even when he was, I think the only time that I ever didn't consider Lex Luger when he was a babyface to, turn heel is when he tapped out Hogan in the rack on Nitro. I was like, oh, that's the ultimate babyface. And then he goes and drops a title, 2 weeks later, and then goes right back to being that, on the fence baby face. I was like, oh my god, he can turn it any second. Remember when he turned on Sting, and there was an angle where he turned on Sting but was pretending that he was still a good guy and calling out Sting and being like, hey Sting, come on out here, and Sting would be goozling him. He's like, if you ever do that again, and then he'd just do it again.
Sting, you gotta stop being so trusting, man. Also, shout out Sting becoming a grandpa.
Oh yeah, shout out to Sting. Yeah.
Shout out to Stinger.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. But while Dave Meltzer's predicting Lex Luger, and I agree with that, I was thinking Luger, especially because the way they kind of got him out of the match at first, I was completely expecting that, in my opinion, that Hogan was going to come down, join up, and save the day, and then Luger sneaks in and does that Luger thing that we've been seeing him do.
Dude, watching that match live when I was 14, I absolutely thought the same thing. When I saw Luger go,
it was so fast.
It was a regular tag team match. I was like, I saw Hogan come down. I'm like, oh, okay, here comes Hogan. Well, no, here comes Luger. He's going to come run down and bash Hogan in the back of the head. And when he didn't, and even at 14, I was smartened up. I knew the business wasn't, on the up and up. I knew it was, scripted and everything.
What?
And I was just like, I was like, yep, here comes Luger. Here he comes. He's going to run in. And then as soon as I saw Hogan push the referee, I was like,
yeah.
My 14-year-old heart dropped.
I was just like, what? What is he doing? But, we also have some other options that Dave threw out there from alleged rumor talks with some insiders, including some names I never really even suspected myself as being the third man, but I'm like, that would have been interesting. Of course, someone that shows up eventually to join up with the group, Ted DiBiase. You also have the rumor of Jeff Jarrett, which is something they kind of visit and plant the seeds on, but never really fully go through. Then you also have, and I'll get more onto this story in a bit, Davey Boy Smith, another option. This one's a choice that comes along a couple years later, Crush. And
Brian Adams.
Brian Adams. And of course, Mabel.
Oh God, throw up that picture
now. That
Nick.
was a weird one.
Oh, where did the picture go? Mac, please find the picture for me.
I'll find the picture. Go ahead, keep talking, I'll find it.
But yes, Mabel was suspected as also being a potential option. And you might be able to catch this on the July 1st, 1996 edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. I love you, Dave, but I gotta hold you to it sometimes.
Yeah, you gotta hold his feet to the fire, man.
Ron Gilman says, isn't Ted in a lot of legal trouble right now? I know his son is. Ted
That
Jr.
is Ted DiBiase Jr., who's in a lot of heat right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ted Sr. previously was, but he was not as deep in as Ted Jr.
And with whatever reason, for whatever reason, Brett Favre's name was part of that too. For whatever reason, Favre was like in that whole scenario with Pat McAfee and DiBiase. It was kind of weird.
It was associated with some interesting things. But Donny Patty says, not the biggest Luger fan, but I did enjoy the 95 run of him and Sting as a good guy team, but when on his own, he's a villain. It was a fun dichotomy with them, and it was fun, too, because he was a double champion. When he was with the tag titles, he would typically do good guy things unless the ref wasn't looking. And when he was on his own defending the TV title, he was a heel. It was very interesting. Yep. I like that Lex Luger duality. But
Nick, I'm sending that photo over to you right now to your personal.
Thank you, sir.
I found it. It is sent right now. Just got delivered.
Oh man, the greatest image ever. This
Robby, you see this? Someone edited this.
You gotta see it.
Watch this.
Absolutely encapsulates everything that we're talking about here. But while I'm putting that up there, fellas, would Mabel have even been something that you guys would have been interested in?
No.
Like, with all due respect, Mabel was a damn good wrestler.
And a good dude, too. I've talked to him. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
The only issue is when you looked at his WWF career, when he won the King of the Ring in 95 after defeating The Undertaker, Vince kind of went in that way to bury Mabel to a point where nobody really wanted to see him, especially when they turned him heel. Mabel, as a character, was far more better as a face because of how the fans would communicate to him and Oscar and all the other guys when it comes to it. But Mabel at that time, he wasn't a big enough star to really be carrying Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. So at that point, it wouldn't have never worked. And especially, we'll say it now, if Mabel was the third man, we wouldn't even be talking about NWO today.
Hey, I just want to say, he is not just going to be the third man. He's going to be the third man on a mission. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Whoever made that, you did phenomenal job.
That was great. That was a great.
So Robby, also Mabel at the time was hurting people. Remember, he had given the leg drop to the Undertaker and broke his cheekbone. Also, in the 95 SummerSlam match for the WWF Championship with Diesel, he gave him a backsplash and fucked up Diesel's back. Like, even to this day, like Kevin Nash says, that splash in the match to his back has contributed to years of pain when it comes to like lifting and like doing like basically anything, like getting up out of bed.
Yep.
So Mabel being buried maybe wasn't because he wasn't a good heel. Maybe it was just because he was hurting dudes on the roster.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
we've seen it happen with a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Right. And, looking at this, though, again, Dave is having a feeling that it's Lex Luger, but he doesn't fully know. Now, this is an aspect that also Dave is just kind of theorizing, and a lot of people, I think, are somewhat looking at it as he's reporting that that's going to be a fact. And I think this is the biggest misconception that he still, to this day, will deal with. And some of the things he was theorizing here was that we're going to get feuds such as Hulk Hogan versus Scott Hall and The Giant versus Kevin Nash. That one we do.
We did see that.
Yeah. A couple of people that are of interest to WCW right now at this point in time. You've got La Parka, who they're actually thinking that La Parka's skeleton costume is a little too silly and gimmicky for WCW's audience, and he won't catch on.
Shut the fuck up.
we all know what happens there. Shout out to the chairman. We love you.
Shout out to the Skull King.
Speaking of the rich and famous, of course, spoiled rich kid Raven was of interest to WCW.
No, that's not canon. You stop talking about that. That's not canon, Nick. That never happened. That was a dream. That was like the Lost Island. That didn't happen.
So right now what they wanted to do was bring in Raven to work with Diamond Dallas Page, because Diamond Dallas Page has been stuck in booking purgatory at this point in time.
Yep.
At the Great American Bash, he was originally meant to have a match with the Great Muta, but Great Muta...
Who, DDP?
DDP and Great Muta at the Great American Bash.
Fucking crazy.
That would have been, but unfortunately, they didn't really want, because Page was supposed to go over Muta, and they didn't want Muta to go, job to Page. So on that point, then they were going to go with, and we saw, semblance of this in the last couple months, the Booty Man. Of course, the former Brutus Beefcake going to be feuding with Diamond Dallas Page, but a certain someone in power, brother, said that his best friend losing wouldn't look good. So we instead get...
We won't mention names.
They then settle on a Mr. Marcus Alexander Bagwell.
Another great guy, by the way.
Oh, the American Male?
American males. American males. If you play it backwards, it sounds like slam your grandma, slam your grandma. listen to it backwards. I'm serious. We got a couple youngsters, some rookies coming into the fold of WCW. Speaking of the dawn of the cruiserweights, Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Billy Kidman have just recently debuted in the last month or so and are getting rave reviews from both road agents and industry insiders alike.
I wonder if you're going to be able to powerbomb that Kidman guy.
Exactly. And plus,
I'll get to a powerbomb moment later in the show.
Chavo Guerrero Jr. What a rookie standout there. Part of the Guerrero family. So, wonder where he turned out
White.
to be.
Right, and speaking of the Guerrero family, Eddie Guerrero has just recently come back from an excursion to New Japan where he defeated Jushin Liger in the finals of the Best of the Super Juniors, where he was Black Tiger.
Black Tiger, hell yeah.
Yes. And I got a little side tangent here with that. Jushin Liger was actually going into overdrive mode at this point in time because he wanted to show that he was better than Hayabusa, because this was around the time Hayabusa and Jushin Liger had their falling out from the feud where Hayabusa's making things very personal with Onita, and they do the work shoot thing, and Liger felt that Hayabusa was using him and New Japan for just clout in the whole feud, and they don't even get the chance to reconcile for a whole 10 plus years, and by that point Hayabusa's career was already over. So good on them for being able to go into wanting to work things out.
Yeah.
But speaking of New Japan, the New Japan relationship is so good that WCW is considering Starrcade 96 taking place at the Tokyo Dome in December. But that does not happen because Nashville, Tennessee happens instead. That works for me, brother.
Yeah.
It's much easier to travel. Don't have to do 50 matches in one day, dude. Thanks to the time zone.
Yeah. Let's get rid of those 6 undercard 10-man tags, brother.
Now, you want to know who's been working in a lot of WCW shows recently?
Yes.
I want you guys think of someone at this point in time who is a huge legend that you probably wouldn't expect to be doing some WCW work around this time.
Legend in like WWF or like overseas, like
all of wrestling, any legend.
All of wrestling. So I'm gonna say 96. So maybe Terry Funk.
All right, Terry Funk. Robby, any guesses?
For whatever reason, Edge is the first thing that comes to my mind.
Oh, that's rookie Edge. He was what was that? Sexton
He was a legend.
Hardcastle?
It wasn't a legend yet.
Yes,
yeah.
Sexton Hardcastle.
No,
Yeah.
wait, no, because was Funk doing the Chainsaw Charlie thing in WWF in 96, or was that 98? Because I remember
that was
him
90,
and
late
Foley
97,
started off
98, because he's getting ready to come back to WWF for the Royal Rumble.
Because the Funker was still in ECW at this point, helping Heyman.
Oh, he was. Yeah, he might have been the
into-
champion at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So who was it, Nick?
The legend that's been participating in different house shows for WCW has been a Mr. Bruno Sammartino. He
What the
has
fuck?
been the
Wait,
ref. Bruno Sammartino was refereeing different bouts for WCW, getting $2,000 a match for Randy Savage versus Ric Flair world title matches.
So wait a minute. So were they playing it off like it wasn't Bruno, or were they making it a big deal that Bruno was refereeing these matches?
Oh, they were making it a big deal because
Okay.
The true living legend, Bruno Sammartino, the only man that was capable of, keeping Savage and Flair in the ring. That's how they were kind of promoting it.
Because I wasn't sure if it was like a Teddy Long situation where he had been in like WCW and he had managed Doom, and he was one of the most famous managers in WCW, and then he comes over to WWE and just starts like refereeing, and they just were like, oh yeah, it's just refereeing. referee Teddy Long. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, no, they do a good job here, and they want to involve Bruno Sammartino even more. So much so that, in fact, they even offer his son David Sammartino a few spots. We even see him later in the year on Nitro. Unfortunately, nothing really happens with that, and he doesn't get signed full time. Neither one really does. But who did get signed full time? A Mr. Sean Waltman. In late July, 123 Kid asked for his release and was granted so he could join National Hall in WCW, and he was set to debut as soon as Hog Wild, where he was even backstage for. However, WWF, being WWF, was getting very petty, and they never sent him an official release. In fact, they were also going to plan to debut him on Fall Brawl, and still did not send that release until after the pay-per-view, because that's how they are.
You don't send that, you son of a bitch.
We got
I put you over Razor.
Of course, we talked about Jeff Jarrett and Ted DiBiase, coming on in here. And with Jeff Jarrett in particular, one of the things that we kept seeing around this time frame was him potentially becoming a member of the NWO. It was strongly hinted at, and even Sting constantly targeting him later in the year. This gets dropped for no reason whatsoever, and they never really follow through with it. But, we do see Jeff Jarrett in the NWO eventually, just not this NWO. That's
that's Silver NWO?
That's Silver NWO. We don't talk about that.
No.
The Wish version.
Exactly. Bret Hart has been quite unhappy with his situation in the WWF, especially because he has just dropped the WWF Championship to a Mr. Shawn Michaels at this point in time. And he's very burnt out. So Bret wants to retire, but he also was considering WCW. But to prevent this, Vince gives him that infamous 20-year contract that leads to a lot of messy stuff in 97.
Yeah, he sounds like a guy that wants to get screwed in about a year and 3 months.
This one is
Can't lose to Canada.
Yeah, speaking of which, this one's not really related to the show, but I just thought this was very interesting, so I wanted to share it. Ron Reese, aka the Yeti, is a huge, pun intended, prospect for New Japan.
I see that.
They wanted him to move to Japan to both live and train at the dojo full time because they saw him as being moldable into their version of the Giant.
Oh my God.
Nothing at all came of this, though, and he starts working shortly after this as Big Ron Studd in WCW before they send him back to the power plant and some local indies for honing his skills. And then he becomes Big Reese in the Flock.
Hey, Nick, you know what's crazy about that Bret Hart contract? If you think about it, if he had signed that in in July of 1996, and Vince McMahon actually stuck to it, he would have been employed through July of 2016.
He could have been drafted.
Yeah. Yeah. He
and honestly,
yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. He would have been fighting Miz, not unironically.
Yeah, because if you look at it, that would have been huge too when it came down to it. But the only issue was, though, too, the WWF at that time was losing money to a point where they couldn't afford Bret at that point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, they were losing money hand over fist.
Oh, yeah.
But he would never have had that match with Goldberg.
Oh, you mean Bill Goldberg?
Bill Goldberg?
He always said Bill Goldberg. Dude, every promo he was like, yeah, I don't like that Bill Goldberg.
Oh, man. But
shout out Bret Hart.
Shout out to Bret Hart. One of the guys that's going to be on the show that we're going to talk about very shortly is the Shark, the former Shark, I should say, Mr. John Tenta, one of the GOATs. He is actually, believe it or not, no longer under a full-time contract at this point. He's instead on nightly per appearance deals.
You know what's funny about that, Nick? I was reading something actually the other day saying that, if you sign a contract with WCW, you still get paid even if you're not used. But some of the guys that were on per appearance deals were getting more money being called to a per appearance show than they would have being under contract. So some guys didn't want to sign contracts because they're like, no, you're giving me $2,000 a shot as compared to $500 a shot if I was under contract. Get out of here.
Right. I remember, too, we're approaching that time period where Mr. Lanny Poffo is being offered a contract to do absolutely nothing. He does 2 house shows and that's it. I mean, hey, free
Downside
money though, right?
guaranteed.
Exactly.
I only wanted to hang out with my brother.
I don't know why that impression killed me. Oh man! But we got some.
Don't call me the genius.
We got some. Speaking of a leap and landing, we got another high flying great around this time. I don't know if you guys heard of this young rookie, but he just got offered a full time contract. His name's I think like Chris Jericho.
No, I never heard.
Yeah. He just did a match at Antonio Inoki's Wrestling Peace Festival, and it impressed WCW officials. Another guy who was on that same show was Bam Bam Bigelow, and they also wanted to give him a contract to come back to WCW.
This was peak Bam Bam too.
This was like 96 Bam Bam was on a whole other level.
Yeah.
But he just saw Hall and Nash go to WCW, and he doesn't want to deal with the clique right now. Doesn't matter who it was.
Yeah, it's funny because Bam Bam Bigelow, I think we talked about it on the Greed show where he fought Sean Stasiak. Right. Was that the Greed show, Nick?
Yeah,
yes.
That was definitely great.
He was just so checked out. He wanted to get the hell out of there, dude. He notoriously hated WCW, but the money was just too good. They're like, here, you'll work like 50 dates a year and you'll make, $250,000, where WWF was, offering guys like $200 a shot because Vince McMahon was in the dirt, So, man, just to think if we still had like prime Bam Bam from like his WrestleMania main event with like Lawrence Taylor in WCW around like 96, 97. Oh man, I would have loved to have seen that, man. I wish Vader had stayed, Bam Bam had stayed. Oh my god, dude. But
what would have happened there?
Oh, dude, no. I mean, literally, you could feel the company turning as soon as Hogan cut that promo. You're like, oh, nobody else is getting any other shine.
Right.
Yep.
But the good news here, though, is Eric Bischoff's not going to give up on Bam Bam. He sees him as being a huge boon to adding to the roster with WCW, and he does eventually sign him in '98. Another guy that Eric Bischoff really wants to sign and even make a part of the NWO, believe it or not, is Tatanka. Tatanka in the NWO sounds interesting, but why do I feel like that would have worked?
Yeah.
I mean, it worked in the $1 Million Corporation, and honestly, he was a damn good heel, so it could have worked.
It could have, right?
When he turned on Luger?
Yeah, exactly.
My God, that was awesome.
I also just love Tatanka.
He's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Got squashed. Dude, I remember I was in my aunt's basement watching WWF Superstars when Ludwig Borga pinned him with his pinky finger and it ended his undefeated streak.
Man. Slinky Hellraiser. That was a time. We got some stellar matches that have been going on. This isn't the first time we've seen Psychosis or Rey Mysterio on the card, and both guys are receiving a lot of praise, with Terry Taylor even going as far as to say Psychosis is going to be the next top lucha star in the United States. Dave Meltzer agrees Psychosis is good, but Dave Meltzer's predicting Rey Mysterio to be the top lucha star in the United States, and I think Dave is 100% right on there. I might have criticized him.
I think Dave was onto something.
He was on the money there.
Still didn't make up for the Mabel thing, Dave, so fuck you.
You did a couple more things. But
I'll be right back 1 second, Nick, okay?
Sounds good. Speaking of Lucha Libre, AAA's house show business is on a decline, as well as the Mexican economy, so it's kind of in line there. On top of that, AAA and WCW's relationship isn't going the greatest. Conan now owns Promo Azteca, so at this point in time, they're taking a lot of AAA's luchadors, and if they're not signing there, they're going to be signing full-time with WCW. Bischoff really wants to apply a lot of pressure to AAA because he's hearing rumors that they're going to be working with the WWF for the 1997 Royal Rumble. So he's trying to pillage.
And then you look at it this way now, too. Like, we're just hearing that rumor, and now you flash it to now in 2025, where now WWE owns AAA.
Right.
And it's so crazy you hear about that because, yeah, sure, WWF had a very brief stint with them, but it was very, very small stint. It didn't last long. But definitely during that time of their gates and stuff being so low, they were struggling to find another star after Conan left, because at that point, Conan was the biggest star Triple I ever had. And at that point, Vampiro isn't there yet. Rey Mysterio had just left. Jericho left. So they were struggling to find their footing as well, especially in a tough economy. That and the storylines were taking a tank. At that point, you still sort of had the Pentagon and Octagon feud still going at that point, and a lot of that kind of got stale towards the end of it, especially because, well, we if those who don't know what happened to the original Penta, but at that point in time, they were definitely struggling, and you could see it too when you go back on YouTube and watch their old Triple I TVs that you could watch for free on YouTube, by the way, because I've been doing that, that there is something missing once Conan had left that company at that point.
Robby dropping the AAA off facts. I gotta give a huge shout out there. Oh, man.
And now WWE is actively on TV spoiling their results. So awesome.
Exactly. Good.
Hey, but it's okay though.
Yeah, it's okay.
The Fed did it. It's fine. It's competition.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, WCW keeps toying with the idea of turning the Giant into a face. They've even pre-taped a few handicap squash matches that they aired earlier in the year, such as him against the Masked Avengers and the Southern Posse. According to not that Tom Green from WCW's Deep Cuts, there was a plan to even have Booty Man, Brutus Beefcake, the Zodiac, Ed Leslie as his manager. I don't know how
I ain't gonna talk about this one.
So, yeah, but kind of like in the match that we see tonight, not to like spoil anything, but the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan, and the Giant versus the Four Horsemen of Chris Benoit and Arn Anderson, like the Giant got like surprisingly he got a hot tag in that match, and the crowd went crazy when he hits that choke slam on Arn Anderson. Spoiler alert! And he pins him. The crowd goes crazy, and he just walks out. And Benoit and Taskmaster are still fighting, and then he just walks back to the ring, and the crowd's like, "Oh my god!
Hey, the Giant's here!" And remember, he later on next month defends the honor of WCW against Hogan.
Yeah, against Hogan. Yeah.
So
I mean, the crowd was organically making him a face, which was crazy.
You know what the crowd's really going to get behind? We've been seeing a lot of vignettes around this time. Blood runs cold.
Oh no!
There is an
Not
entity
Glacier.
that is approaching called Glacier. At this point in time of July 7th, 96, neither Dave Meltzer nor even WCW themselves seemingly know what they want this to turn into or become. In fact, apart from the Glacier that we all know and love today, at this point in time, it's looked at as being either like a group or just like an overall arching story or team. With this whole Blood Runs Cold thing, WCW want to apparently bring in Hakushi. They want to bring in the former Yoshi Kwan. And they want to bring in Brian Clark, who eventually becomes Wrath and does become a part of the storyline. Dave is theorizing that Glacier is going to become a new tag team. Sorry, Dave.
So yeah, I think Eric Bischoff took inspiration from Mortal Kombat with this.
That's
right?
what I was about to say. Yep.
He's getting a lot of steam at this time. At this point, speaking of things that were revolutionary, the show was revolutionary, but something that's commonplace now, but at this point in time was a huge innovation. WCW referees are now wearing earpieces that they're allowed to get instructions from a gorilla position, including input, and maybe if there's a change or something on the fly, they can have a way to speak two ways to gorilla. So very interesting. It's something we take so for granted nowadays, but just became a thing, which is weird to think about.
Yeah.
Now, there's Mr. Terry Bollea. We'll get back to him right now. Hogan, as we know, there's always a lot of worry about Hogan's creative control clause leading to him not wanting to, maybe we can't trust him to be the third man. What happens if he doesn't walk out there? Well, it actually seems that, according to Meltzer and some other reports at the time, he agreed to this about roughly 11 days before the actual show. Some of the reasons include he really did everything he could as a top babyface. Plus, the wrestling business right now, especially for WCW, they're in a boom period because we just mentioned those matches with Randy Savage versus Ric Flair where Bruno Sammartino was the ref. They were selling out left, right, front, center, and none of those shows had Hogan on it. So Hogan doesn't have that ability to claim that it's because of him. So he lost a lot of leverage there.
So I don't know if you guys have ever listened to. I personally stopped when he started just unabashed, like bashing AEW. But before he did, the 83 Weeks podcast, they did a episode on the 1996 Bash at the Beach. And Eric says that his original plan was Sting, and that Steve was on board with it, and they were planning to do it. And then he got a call from Hogan, who was off shooting a movie, or it might have been Thunder in Paradise. And Hogan said, "Yeah, I'm flying you out to California. I want you to come out here. I want to talk to you." And he said he literally walked into a trailer. Hogan was sitting down in the trailer. Eric sat across from him, and he goes, "So what's this thing about a third man, dude?" And Eric goes, "Well, yeah, we're going to go with Sting." And he was like, brother. And he goes, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Like this." Eric even said on the podcast, like he pointed at himself and goes, "That's me, brother." And he was like, "What?"
And to add on to that, then you hear Terry Bollea's side of the story of where he didn't know if he wanted to do it or not. It's been
he says that when he was backstage, he was thinking about not even walking out. Yeah,
exactly. So he was basically saying that it was just a last-minute decision, and that everyone was panicking on what to do if he wasn't going to do it. So we don't know at that point what really took place, because you got Hogan saying one thing, then you got Bischoff saying another thing, and that's been a huge issue in Hogan Recall's history, is how he tells his side of the story. So we don't know what's true and what's not true at this point.
Listen, I am going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say something nice about Eric Bischoff, even though I'm not his biggest fan nowadays. I'm going to side with Eric Bischoff on this one, because even though he is a liar, he's a liar and he's a fraud and he's a failure. I think that with Hogan's track record with lying, especially saying that he was going to be the bassist for Metallica at one point, dude, that I'm going to go out, I'm going to say this. And it's hurting me. I believe Eric Bischoff.
Whoa.
I gotta say that too. I believe Eric Bischoff too, because you look at Hogan, he embellishes about everything nowadays. It's like almost every 5-10 years he changes his story up on the body slam heard around the world on Andre at WrestleMania 3. So at this point, Hogan's age, it doesn't add up. Plus, who do you trust more? Do you trust a man with the said creative control and tells so many lies nowadays, or do you trust the man who planned the whole storyline out?
I mean, here's one of the things too, is Scott Hall himself has said on numerous occasions that he was under the impression that it was set to be Sting all the way up until about the very start of the show when he found out, okay, we are going with Hogan. So this was being kept very hush-hush, so much so that even Scott Hall, who is a part of the storyline, didn't even know what was going on. And quite frankly, we've seen Hogan change his mind like the day of events. You know, we talked about Bash at the Beach 2000. We look at Starrcade 97 that we did a show on previously. Go check that out when you can. And you know, in my opinion, I think they still always wanted Sting to be that plan B. Because when you think about it, that Stinger splash spot with Luger, that happened like instantaneously. And it was never like anything super brutal against Sting, relatively so. Like a lot of the brutality the Outsiders did more so against Macho Man than Sting. Yeah, Sting would, take some like abdominal stretches and whatnot, but it's the Stinger. He can get through that. Macho Man's getting obliterated by so much stuff, and I think that they had Sting ready to go in case we don't see Hulk Hogan walk to the ring.
So Nick, as of 3 days ago, Hulk Hogan talked about this. He claims that The outsiders, Hall and Nash, when they stepped out of the ring when he came down, did not know he was the third man standing outside of the ring. That's what he just said. He said, it says, I'm not going to go into the article, but it says, Hulk Hogan says that Hall and Nash, when they were outside of the ring at the 1996 Bash at the Beach, when he came down the aisle, did not know that he was the third man.
You never know what to believe with the Hulkster, dude.
Yeah, but it's like, dude, I mean, like, look, and I'm going to say something nice about The Undertaker here, okay? And I know, and people notoriously know that I think Undertaker is shit from a hemorrhoided ass, but I'm going to say something nice. When The Undertaker left the business, people went, oh, his aura and mystique is gone. He should have never done a podcast. And I'm like, dude, there's a guy that's been in the business for 40 years that can expel his knowledge, and he's doing it for good. He's not being a Jim Cornette and using his knowledge for evil, or being an Eric Bischoff and using his knowledge to bash AEW and say that they're doing it wrong when he ran a $100 billion company into the ground 30 years ago. But Undertaker's literally out there going and helping guys and going on that LFG show. Yeah, it sucks a bag of dicks, but he's at least like mentoring people,
right?
You know, and he's expelling upon like his wisdom, and he's not lying. Like, Hogan is forever in the business. He's forever.
What are you talking about, dude? I discovered Kevin Owens' brother.
he's forever. Like in a world where kayfabe hasn't existed in 20 years, Hulk Hogan is kayfabe, brother. You know.
I have two more bits of news. There's a very interesting bit with Hogan and Savage that I did not know about at all until reading it just recently for this.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Real quick on here, we have the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal. They both have just recently walked out of WCW because they heard about what Hall and Nash were making, and the way they see it, they deserve to be making just as much, if not more than them. And WCW disagrees with that, and Hawk and Animal are currently done. They do eventually go over to the WWF.
Yeah.
And now, this was the bit. This is the last bit of news I have here, and then we can jump into the show itself. I have this written down, and I wasn't expecting this. This was months before any WCW plans were put into fruition. As soon as early April, WCW Halloween Havoc was already set to have the main event be Randy Savage versus Hulk Hogan.
Oh, wow.
Reportedly, Slim Jim paid $300,000 to sponsor the show in Las Vegas, and part of the agreement was for the main event to be the first Randy Savage versus Hulk Hogan match in WCW. And Dave Meltzer at this time was anticipating that Randy Savage is going to be turning heel in the summer.
Ooh.
Just change it up a little bit, Dave, and you'll get what actually happened there. And also in here, Randy Savage's contract is going to be coming up. His contract's actually going to be up late October, early November, and he's reportedly somewhat unhappy with WCW, and he's even thinking about going back to the WWF. And remember, where Savage goes, Slim Jims will follow, and WWF would really like to have more of that Slim Jim money. Randy, in the end, ends up renewing and returning to WCW in late January of '97.
Now, Nick, let me ask you a question before we jump into the show.
Yes, sir.
So there was a period of time where Randy Savage had left the WWF in 1990, I want to say 3. So he leaves the WWF in 1993 at the ripe old age of 35 because Vince McMahon thought he was too old to be in the ring and put him on commentary in those first, I think the first year of WWF Raw. So there was I remember seeing obviously the Macho Man Slim Jim commercials, just snap into it, Yeah. But after Macho Man left, I think there was a period of time where Slim Jim stayed because they tried to make Bam Bam Bigelow, Diesel, and the Ultimate Warrior at one point the Slim Jim guy. So what was the time? Do you know the time frame between when Randy left and when Slim Jim's left? Because they did try to make Diesel and Bam Bam and the Ultimate Warrior their spokesperson after Randy left.
Yeah. From what I am aware of, I think when Randy Savage leaves, I believe it was within the middle of '94. Okay.
Oh yeah, because he was in the Rumble with Yokozuna when Yokozuna threw him out. Then he was at WrestleMania. Yeah, so you're right, '94. Yeah.
Because then, because remember in '94 that leads us into WrestleMania 10, where he celebrates at the end with Bret Hart.
That's right. Yep.
I think one of the big things was that they always intended to try to stick with WWF because they did have that relationship for so long, and they wanted to give the benefit of the doubt, but it's just it didn't work out business wise compared to how it did with Randy Savage, and it's like sorry guys, we got to go with our winner, our bread and butter guy, who is Randy. It was just such a good mutual bond, and I think they still were able to have some semblance of the Slim Jims deal, because they were able to work things, but it just wasn't nearly as much as they would get if they still had Randy.
Okay.
But that was all of the news I had leading into and exiting this. One of the things I do want to look at real quick, again, I'm just going to rapid fire lightning round, who the list is that we have now for the rumored third men. We, of course, have Lex Luger, who, in my opinion, was who I thought the likely suspect was.
Yeah.
You have Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, Sting, who Scott Hall thought that was, Jeff Jarrett, Bret Hart, Davey Boy Smith, Ted DiBiase, Crush, Mabel. I even saw a couple reports from forums of Yokozuna and Vader as the third man. I think a lot of this was because this was around the time frame that they were taking time off to go to Duke University for the weight loss clinic.
Yep.
And another prevalent name I saw in a lot of these forums, Shawn Michaels.
Oh my God.
So that was pretty interesting. Like, wow, imagine if Shawn did jump ship. I mean, we've seen how much Shawn has talked about not liking the toxic environment that he himself was a part of that contributed to the toxic environment, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
How he said, he hated working with Bret. He hated so much of the stuff and having to, be super political backstage. And he's threatened numerous times to walk out and go to WCW. So I wouldn't have necessarily been surprised. I mean, you got contracts working a certain type of way, but following the curtain call, if Shawn Michaels jumped in and became a third man, dare I say, that would have also been a huge hit to the WWF. That at the time, how their business was doing, that would have been a real difficult one to recover from.
But then again,
Nick,
too.
So one final thing, it says Macho Man Randy Savage left the WWF at the end of September 1994 with his final match, according to Wikipedia, in Germany on September 13th, 1994. His partnership with Slim Jim did not end until the end of the year, and they negotiated with WCW beginning in January of 1995.
Which he just signed there, so that works out time-wise.
Yep.
All right.
So should we get into this awesome show?
Let's do it. Real quick, can I hit on, I'm sorry, I will not talk after this. I want to hit on just the matches on the pre-show. We had a dark match that happened before any of this that was not recorded, and hopefully the WCW Vault releases it. Jim Powers defeats Hugh Morris in what was apparently 4 minutes, 23 seconds. Only thing I want to note there, Jim Powers got a victory, and it was on a historic pay-per-view.
Yes. Against the Laugh Man.
Against the Laughing Man, Hugh Morris, exactly. On WCW Main Event, which they were using as their pre-show right before the pay-per-view, because this was the show that, hey, we're going to entice you to order this event. And they were talking nonstop. You saw a lot of Mean Gene hanging out there with the police officers, which, by the way, shout out, those officers were standing there a very long time, from the pre-show all the way up to the main event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were there for a while.
It's wild.
They were making sure no one got in.
It's wild that this match was relegated to the pre-show, but WCW Tag Team Titles, the Steiner Brothers versus Harlem Heat. On the June 24th episode of Nitro, we had a triangle match between the then champions Luger and Sting, Harlem Heat, and the Steiners. That's when we get that iconic shot of the Outsiders with baseball bats going up there to the ring where security and police officers jump in there and they're reaching for their guns. That was wild. That was insane. And in the background of all of that, one of the Harlem Heat rolls up Luger and they win the titles. And Harlem Heat are such chads. They walk past the Outsiders like, go ahead, try us.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the coolest scenes, and this was everything you would expect from these two teams going into it. I don't know if any of you guys checked out the pre-show.
No.
Oh, I wouldn't even know where to find it.
All right, I'll just go over these real quick then. and then we'll get right to the actual show. Colonel Parker got involved, and Rick threatened to use the cane on him, but then we get the return of Sister Sherry Martel. She jumps in there on Rick's back, and the ref throws the whole match out. Sherry was just let go earlier in January after showing up to a few tapings in very rough shape while she was battling her addiction issues, but she got clean and came back, and she forces a kiss on Colonel Parker, and they reunited because they were working together for how many years at this point? It felt like they were doing this story forever.
Yeah.
Another interesting match we had there was Hard Work Bobby Walker taking on young Mr. Billy Kidman. It's a very messy, high-flying match from two younger rookies, but hey, you know what? It's that thing where they're going so fast. You could tell they're kind of nervous, but I thought it was fun. Crowd really was not into this, and not nearly as much as they would be for Ray and Psychosis. And Bobby Walker was able to get a lot of height. Like, he jumped from the top rope, and I'm not even kidding. He basically went as high up as about half of that pole that was up in the corner for the Carson City Silver Dollar match. That was such a jump. That was cool. Bobby Walker got the victory, handshake from both guys. Here's a very interesting match. Fire and Ice, Scott Flash Norton and the Ice Train took on the Rock and Roll Express.
I saw that when you sent it this morning in the group chat, and I was like, is Nick high? Is this real?
This was real, and the Rock and Roll Express got the victory.
Wow.
For me, the biggest thing, I love Ice Train. Scott Norton's really cool. He's such a scary, intimidating guy. And I think it's appropriate, though, that we get the Rock and Roll Express on here because they are, without a doubt, we've covered it on numerous times on some of the older WCW shows, one of the most important tag teams in all of wrestling and especially WCW. So being able to have them on a historic card feels right. And the main event of this pre-show is Eddie Guerrero versus Lord Steven Regal. How do we not find a way to get this onto the main card? Guerrero
that should have been main card. Right. It should have been.
Like, we could have cut some time from some of the matches. I talk about that a little later on, but Guerrero and Steven Regal, this was a great match. The crowd really loves Eddie, and he got one of the biggest reactions of the whole night, including the main show. Finish was a little bit messy, and it was like everyone's fault. Nick Patrick stopped counting the pinfall. Eddie didn't get a shoulder up, and Regal, it looked like he was supposed to get his legs up on the rope, but didn't. Anyways, Eddie gets a swift roll-up for the victory, and again, the crowd went nuts. They love Eddie. This match would have been so cool on the main show, and I'm sad it wasn't. But now,
I love that Eddie Guerrero attire, like the early Eddie Guerrero, like the red and white suspenders. I love that attire on
this one. He was in black and red.
Dude, I love it. Yeah, it's like the black tiger. It's like the Black Tiger attire.
It's a good one.
It's exactly because he just came back. So yeah, that was that. Yeah. All right, Matt, would you like to lead the way now on the actual pay-per-view?
All right, so. We don't get this on the Peacock version, but the show opens up with a Seal ripoff and Hostile Takeover video package, and still awesome. Tony, Bobby, and Dusty welcome us and say that Eric Bischoff is missing. And this is a through line throughout the whole entire show that he's like just not there. So the show starts off now. WCW really wasn't doing these type of cruiserweight matches. I mean, they were doing like a variation. They were, Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero had the cruiserweight style at the time. Chris Benoit had the cruiserweight style at the time. But you didn't have guys like Rey Mysterio and Psychosis because Rey Mysterio is only 21 years old here,
right?
Which is absolutely crazy. What I loved about this is that they had Iron Mike Tenay on commentary, which was just a breath of fresh air because Mike Tenay, I think, for me personally, growing up, I loved the Attitude Era, but looking back on Jerry Lawler, he was just horny all the time on commentary with Jim Ross, and it kind of ruined some of the things when you go back and watch it now with adult eyes, But Mike Tenay and Don West are my all-time favorite commentary team, and just because Mike Tenay is such a professional. We didn't deserve Mike Tenay because in a land where WCW commentators were trying to put over the main event or trying to talk over each other, or Dusty was, kayfabe bickering with Bobby the Brain Heenan, you have Mike Tenay calling like hurricanranas, and Bobby's going, oh, that's a Frankensteiner. He's like, well, no, in Lucha Libre it's a hurricanrana, so I'm going to correct you there. So that was kind of like a breath of fresh air, because at the beginning they were trying to bully Mike Tenay, and Mike Tenay just wasn't having it. He's just sitting there calling the matches, ignoring people. But man, what a match this was. I'm not going to go over it move for move, but
there's a lot.
Yeah, when you think about Rey Mysterio and Psychosis, they pulled out everything here. Hurricanranas, springboards,
Robby.
Hello, sister.
Oh, and so at one point in this match, Ray's on the outside. He gets thrown to the outside. That's a crazy shot. He gets thrown to the outside. Psychosis hits a guillotine leg drop. Ray dies on the outside. Psychosis goes up to the top rope, full sends a senton, and just crushes Ray, and Ray dies. It was nuts. And then right before that spot right there, Psychosis goes for a tope over the top rope and just smashes his leg on the guardrail. Yeah. And I don't know if this was supposed to be like Psychosis selling his leg, because they're putting it over huge on commentary, because Heenan goes like, oh no, he hit his leg. Oh my God, his ankle could be broken. Oh my God. And he just gets up, and they're still selling it. And I'm like, is Psychosis supposed to be selling this thing like he broke his ankle?
One of the points that I just noticed too on like a light rewatch, because this is such a great match. I turned this on a little bit earlier to watch this match in particular. I didn't notice this until I saw that. Rey Mysterio, actually, when he's out there waiting for this, you see him look over and he sees a chair that was set up, like a folding chair that was in its out position. He quickly swats it away.
Oh, really?
Because when you watch this back, if Ray didn't do that, Psychosis would have went headfirst right into that folding chair.
Wow.
Yeah.
At one point during, I'm sorry, go ahead, Nick. What?
I'm just saying, good on Ray there.
Oh yeah, I mean that's just, and to be 21 years old and have that kind of situational awareness is awesome. But at one point in this match, Psychosis just starts spamming leg drops. Like he does like 10 leg drops in a row. Yeah. He leg drops Ray in the ring, goes for a pin, Ray kicks out at 2, goes for another leg drop, Ray kicks out at 2. He just keeps trying to pin him during this match. He keeps kicking out at 2. Finally, he goes to like the second rope and hits like a second leg drop, and Ray kicks out at 2. And then he does the guillotine leg drop off the top, and then when he climbed to the top rope, I was like, he is not going to do a top rope leg drop to the outside. And then he just does that senton and just full sends it and kills Ray. When I saw it, I was in my car watching on my iPad, and I screamed. Someone probably thought there might have been a woman being murdered in the parking lot of my work, because I screamed when that happened. But they were just pulling out everything here. Twisting, acai moonsaults. Heenan doesn't know what to call these things. Tenay's like, oh, twisting acai moonsault. And Heenan's like, what are you talking about? But yeah, just everything that you would expect from these guys. Just awesome. The end is Ray gets caught. Ray goes for a spring back in the ring again, but gets caught and dropped with a powerbomb for 2. Psychosis runs him stomach first into the ropes and looks for a splash mountain, but Ray counters in midair for another rounder and pins him to a big pop at 15:05. And I think Heenan said something like, what is the name of that move? And Tenay goes, it is called a splash mountain. And Heenan goes, a splash what? And Tenay just, you can hear this Tenay go, like, he was so frustrated with Heenan. But, so if anybody doesn't know, a top rope splash mountain is like when you're standing on the second rope and Ray's feet are on the top rope, and you have him in a razor's edge position, and you go to throw him, and Ray caught him, hit the Hurricanrana, grabbed the leg, and pinned Psychosis at 15:05. My note says, just mind-blowing stuff for a time that when it wasn't commonplace. I said it was a bit too long for my liking, and sometimes Psychosis kept a headlock on a little bit too long, for a lucha-style match. But they're just figuring the American style out. They didn't go all out. So I gave it 4.25 stars. What about you guys?
Robby?
When it comes to this match was high octane as it gets. I love the fact too that this is why Mike Tenay is redeemed as the professor of professional wrestling. Not only did he tell, in case someone was new and watching WCW for the first time, he broke down not just Rey and Psychosis' rivalry, but he told the lineage, the history of Lucha Libre in Mexico, and telling it as it is, and as what Max said, he was breaking down the lucha moves sector by sector. He dissected it like it was a science of himself, and that's what made Mike Tenay one of the greatest play-by-play commentators of all time, and that is why TNA benefited from him for such a long time. And when you look at move for move, Rey and Psychosis at this point, they have had probably hundreds of matches against each other, whether it was in Mexico, America, Japan, it didn't matter. But the one thing I did like too is when you're watching it as a casual and you're watching these two as the first time, us hardcore wrestlers, we can understand the story. But I liked how they used Psychosis as the bigger man into this match of slowing Rey down. Because if you don't slow Rey down, he's going to run circles around you. And that's why I think, as Max said, that's why they were putting him in headlocks a lot more. Because for the story of wanting to ground the speedy guy down by using your size and your strength in order to power him down, which I really did love. Yeah, we had something too that Bobby Heenan said about Rey Mysterio that probably would not fly today. I don't know if you guys caught it.
No,
I don't know. I should go
probably
there.
blocked it
It is
out.
the 90s.
Yeah.
So, but it had to do with a certain mascot and being and Rey being from San Diego. I'll say that.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
So, when you look at how this match was, it was beautiful. To me, besides everything that happened, if I had to give this match a 10 out of 10, this is the match right here. And this will be the first 10 out of 10 stars I've given a match out of probably of anything we did in the WCW podcast. Because it was fluid, sure, Psychosis selling an injury. But it also told a story, and plus you were seeing a lot of stuff too that you weren't seeing before at the time, like the senton going out to the outside, or someone taking a hurricanrana out of a splash mountain. At that point in time, the American crowd did not see that, at least for a WCW crowd. If you're an ECW fan watching that, you've seen them do that stuff. But for a WCW crowd, this was a good way to introduce what the luchadors were going to do for this cruiserweight division, and why Rey Mysterio became one of the biggest lucha stars of all time. To me, this was a perfect match. I enjoyed every minute of it. 10 out of 10 in my opinion.
Nick?
I gotta agree with you, Robby, on that one. This match itself, I put right here at the tippy top, in all caps, revolutionary. I gave it a 5 out of 5. Like, this match, 5 stars, probably doesn't even do it justice. I should probably give it more. But, when you think about it, like you were saying, Robby, and like you were saying too, Mack, like, we, as, like, hardcore fans are much, acclimated to this type of style, this type of wrestling. And even at this point in time, you would see stuff like this in an ECW. And if you were into a lucha libre like an Iron Mike Tenay would be, you would be familiar with this. But on a mainstream, major American promotions pay-per-view, you really did not see much of this. I mean, sure, you had the light heavyweight division of 91, and you'd see Liger pulling out some stuff similar to this, but it was never up against a guy that was of a similar class to him. Brian Pillman, probably the closest, but still, we were able to see, again, the dawn of the cruiserweight division, because when they picked back up with the cruiserweights, you had guys like a Malenko, like Guerrero, even Jerry Lynn as Mr. JL, but it just didn't compare to what guys that were in the Lucha Libre style could do. And in particular, you had Rey Mysterio, who had just come into the Great American Bash. Earlier in the year, up against a heavyweight like Conan, we saw the debut of Psychosis. So these are two newer, younger guys that are really just trying to prove themselves to not just, everyone in the locker room, but also to every single person that we see right here that is watching such a crazy, wild match. Both guys have a lot to prove. And the way that they went about this, like you were saying, Robby, it was so fluid. It was so well defined. Everything felt like it needed to happen in this match. Everything they did mattered. And that's one of the most important things to me. And I feel like this match really is what truly kickstarted the cruiserweight revolution of WCW. And I can't say enough good things about this. There's a reason the fans here gave a standing ovation to both these guys because it was such a good match. Again, I can't say enough good things. 5 stars for me.
Just to an aside, Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter later that week gave it 4 3/4 stars.
Ooh,
yeah.
I agree with you on that
one. That was the highest rated match on this show by a country mile. But that's not to say it wasn't good.
Right.
So right out of the Rey Mysterio. Yeah. So right out of the Rey Mysterio and Psychosis match, we head backstage and Conan is talking. Mean Gene is talking to the United States champion Conan. He's hyping up his match with Ric Flair. He mentions that if any of the 4 horsemen get in the ring or anybody else that's associated with Ric Flair, punch him in the mouth. And if one of the women wants to get involved, that being Liz or Nancy Benoit, he will clothesline them. That's one hell of a way to sell a match. But up next, we have the Carson City Silver Dollar match. Big Bubba with Jimmy Hart versus John Tenta. Both of these men are now dead, so rest in peace to Ray Traylor and the Earthquake John Tenta. This match was, so if anybody doesn't know, there was a sock that was on a pole, and the pole was about 30 feet up in the air, and it contained silver dollars, about maybe 10, maybe 15 silver dollars in the sock, and the first person to get that sock would be able to use it on their opponent to try to win the match.
Let the record show, by the way, Carson City is Nevada, and we are currently in Florida for this pay-per-view.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that. But this match, it wasn't really anything. It was just 2 semi-trucks slamming into each other and then teasing that they were going to climb up this pole. But the pole wasn't like a WWF match or a WWE match that anybody remembers. Like a Ray Traylor would have numerous nightsticks on a pole match when he was Big Boss Man later in the 2000s or then later in the 90s with the Big Boss Man. But it wasn't like a 5-foot pole. This thing, you had to legitimately climb it. And, these guys just ran into each other, hit each other with spine busters, crotching Big Bubba on the rope, fighting on the floor, clotheslines. Eventually, John Tenta gets smart because Big Boss Man brings in a pair of scissors because he was trying to tie John Tenta to the rope by his wrist tape. And John Tenta gets the scissors, cuts himself free, and then tries to cut the pole off of the ring post, which is actually pretty damn smart.
Right.
But he's low-blowed by Big Bubba, and that's when Jimmy Hart, 108 pounds soaking wet with a brick in his pocket, Jimmy Hart decides to climb the pole. John Tenta incapacitates Big Bubba just long enough so when Jimmy Hart climbs down, Jimmy Hart's celebrating because the last thing he saw was Big Bubba telling him to go up the pole. He turns around. John Tenta grabs the sock, pushes Jimmy Hart off the pole. Jimmy Hart does a little pratfall to the ground, and he ends up taking that sock and just full sending it right into Big Bubba's face. Knocks him out, pins him 1, 2, 3, and then to add insult to injury after the match, he takes the silver dollars, dumps them on Big Bubba, and then puts 2 of the silver dollars over his eyes like he had killed him. Yeah. But yeah, it wasn't very good, but the crowd loved it, man. They were into it. Decent power moves. Again, it was certainly different, and there was nothing wrong with that. I gave it a 1.5 because it was just a boring ass match until the finish when Jimmy Hart went up. But I mean, I didn't like it, but I liked it. If that's
Right.
if that makes any sense. What did you think, Robbie?
Well, for someone that everybody knows this, I said it in the chat, Vince Russo ruined any kind of pole match for me. To me,
Fair.
when it comes to this match, it's essentially what it is. It's a sock full of silver dollars on a pole. To me, pole matches are the worst fucking stipulations of all time. And I really do hate that. But however, though, I did not fully hate this match. It was an okay match by my booking, but it is good to see John Tenta, who at the time was definitely slowing down his career, and you can see that throughout the match, that John Tenta finally got a nice face run. Because most of the time, most of his career in America, he was more of a heel, and even in Japan, he was more of a heel. And now it's because of how Japan's professional wrestling system works. But however, seeing John Tenta getting this win, it was the right way to go. It got a nice pop, because who doesn't like John Tenta? All the work he did as Shark and Earthquake had at that point made enough sense for him to finally turn to be a face. And Big Bubba, great trailer. He's always a great worker. No matter what you can give him, he's going to try to make something good out of it. But when it came to it, finding the loophole, because we all know John Tenta can't get up that damn turnbuckle, on trying to cut that pole down, that bumped it up to a 3 stars for me out of 10 to a 5 out of 10, because it's smart, because there's no way John Tenta could get up in that turnbuckle. I don't even think we ever seen Tenta in his whole career go up the turnbuckle to jump off of it.
Yeah, he got up to like the second rope on this one,
Yeah.
Robbie, and then he just started cutting. He was just like, oh, no, I'm not doing that.
But however, though, the match was fun. It was hard hitting, but it wasn't the greatest match. It obviously could have been better. I gave it a 5 out of 10, and that is just because the right person in the situation won, and that was John Tenta.
Nicholas.
Y'all, I had so much fun with this match.
I knew you fucking would.
I am
knew that.
such a huge fan of John Tenta. I'm a
I know you are.
huge fan
Yeah.
of Big Bubba. I love Jimmy Hart. So this match was just perfect for me. You know, this had a lot of elements that you're going to find in a lot of modern meat matches, so to speak. And an important note here, too. This is just following John Tenta's run as the Shark in the Dungeon of Doom, which is kind of a shame, because I feel like the Shark at the Bash at the Beach would have been perfect here. But, you know, this was a month after the legendary "I'm not a fish, I'm a man" promo.
Oh,
And, you know, we have the aspects that are all just coming together. So many pieces of their feud are adding up here. You know, we have the aspect, too, of this match being purposeful, because Big Bubba knows that Jimmy Hart can climb up that pole. John Tenta, there's no way he's going to get up there, right? And then there's the logic. There's not the wrestling brain in here. This is an actual thinking man's brain that kicks in. I'm not going to be able to climb that, but you know what I can do? I can cut the straps. I can undo it. And just the fact that they're using real logic in here, it was perfect. And all the elements of their feud, such as Big Bubba using scissors to cut John Tenta's hair. So, of course, he's got to cut the rest of it off. So that's why he has the scissors with him. And it all just made so much sense and worked together beautifully. And again, I had so much fun with this match. And again, Tenta using his brain is such a huge aspect of that. So I gave this a solid 3 stars. You know, I wasn't expecting a technical masterpiece, but it was just so much fun. Great battle between 2 of the best super heavyweights to ever do it. And again, a shout out to Jimmy Hart, because I don't think that was going to be very easy for the way he climbed up there.
No.
We got to really appreciate him doing that, because it also kind of felt like he didn't even practice it.
No. Here I come, Daddy.
And the way too he slid down like a fireman.
Yeah. So can I say one more thing before we move on?
Yeah.
I think one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time is honestly Ray Traylor. he went from fighting Hogan in the 80s, from being from Cobb County, Georgia, almost being 400 pounds at that point, fighting Hulk Hogan, to going to the UWF, being the UWF champion, going to WCW and doing all his runs there as the boss and Big Bubba and all that, and kind of floundering for a couple of years, and then really finding his footing coming back to the WWF and being the personal enforcer for Vince McMahon with the nightstick and the flak jacket. He lost like 150 pounds and did the hardcore stuff with Al Snow. Say what you want about the Pepper storyline and everything. It is memorable. It's infamous, but it's memorable. And just being a very solid worker, a guy you could slot in at any spot on the card, and being reliable and being believable and just being a complete dickhead throughout his whole entire career. And then to lose him at 40 years old is a fucking shame. But yeah, shout out if anybody hasn't seen any Big Bubba Rogers, The Boss, or any Big Boss Man stuff, go check that out, because Ray Traylor was really a underrated MVP of the wrestling business. So saying that, we go to the commentary table, and they're debating again who will be the third man. They're doing a really good job and delivering and putting this over like it's a big deal. Back to Gene with Randy Savage, Sting, and Lex Luger, and they're all dressed like Sting.
I thought that was the nicest touch. All of them in matching face paint.
Yeah. Savage doesn't care who the third man is because he's going to hurt everybody in the match. Luger says that he's prepared, and Sting says the unknown gives him goosebumps. Savage was just chiming in and talking over everybody, trying to get in his one-liners. His catchphrases were awesome. They said that they're going to take out the outsiders and neutralize the threat even before it becomes a problem. So next up is the Lord of the Rings match with taped fists between the Lord of the Ring, Diamond Dallas Page, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan. DDP won the Lord of the Ring moniker by winning Battle Bowl at Slamboree in May. So both men have taped fists, and naturally they just start running and punching at each other. DDP spits his gum on Hacksaw, and then he bails to the floor. We get a sweep of the legs and breaks out tape to tie Duggan's legs around the ring post. DDP pounds away with taped fists and goes to work on Duggan. He eventually takes off Duggan's taped fists, so Duggan doesn't have any more taped fists during the match. At one point, Duggan gets caught with a few elbows as Page heads up top. Duggan knocks him off balance and causes Page to land balls first on the top rope, which looks like it really hurt because he spread eagle so hard.
Yeah.
Duggan bounces DDP headfirst off the buckle and sends him to the floor with a clothesline. It should be noted that Duggan no longer has any tape, like I said earlier. DDP gets chased back in the ring and kicks the rope to stun Duggan, which gives him the opening to hit the Diamond Cutter for the win at 5:43 and to retain the Lord of the Ring. Match went 5 minutes and 43 seconds. My note says good, but not good. Something different. The crowd loved it. The tape fist stip really didn't mean anything other than DDP cutting the tape off of Duggan's hands. It was just another step for DDP's ascension to the top of the card, which nobody really realized was taking shape right here in 1996. I gave it 2.5 stars. After the match, Duggan tapes up his fists and unloads on DDP and gets his heat back after the match. So, I mean, this match is kind of hard for me because if you're going to have a taped fist match, you need to have somebody at least get a little bit of color in the match. You need to put over that having taped fist is important, because every fist that DDP threw, it just seemed like Duggan was absorbing it because Duggan has a hard head and, doesn't feel pain because his gimmick is that he might be mentally retarded. I mean, I don't know, So, but Duggan's one of those guys that the crowd can get behind any single time. He has the gimmick, he has the look. He's the ultimate underdog. Remember when the NWO had beat up everybody, and Duggan was coming out with the big WCW flag that looked like it fit on the side of a bus.
Yeah.
And Nash is on commentary going like, I should go out there and kick his ass and spray paint him right now, that son of a bitch. But yeah, Duggan is always fun to watch because he's just so wacky and he's so goofy, and you can really tell in this match that DDP is going to be something special in about a year and a half, maybe a year from now. So yeah, I gave it. I mean, I was wavering on 2.25, but I gave it 2.5 stars. Robby?
For me, being a fan of both Hacksaw Jim Duggan and DDP, the tape fist stipulation I'm going to agree with Mack on. It didn't really need to be a tape fist match, and if it did, they needed to show a little bit more importance behind it. Because at that point, it's not really a tape fist match anymore if someone's fist is taped off. There's no logic behind just doing that. And then the referee's like, hey, this is the rules of the match. Like, he's going to have his fist taped, which for whatever reason didn't get involved in that. But the match itself, it was quick. It was fun. Hacksaw Jim Duggan is always going to forever be a great talent when it comes to his character. And DDP, as Mack was saying, he is definitely on the rise at this point. And may I add, to me, this is one of the first matches where we're insinuating that you could hit the diamond cutter basically anywhere. Because it literally looked like DDP ring guarded him like he was playing 2K25 and just hit the cutter on him. And to me, this match was, in my opinion, it was good. It was fun. It was quick. Just wish they would have added more importance to the tape fist. But aside from that, I gave it a 7 out of 10. I didn't see anything really that wrong. To me, it was good. Not great, but good.
Nick?
You know, compared to the previous two matches, I didn't enjoy this one as much as them. I mean, like you guys were saying, you know, we are seeing a peek into the future. This guy is one of the stars. We're basically wearing the same color blue. But on top of that, too, this was another way that we got to see, because if you look behind Diamond Dallas Page there, you know, you got police officers everywhere, extra security. Like, this feels like a big deal for the rest of the show that, you know, the outsiders can strike at any time. And, you know, we think about in a couple months how DDP's connection to Hall and Nash is going to be made readily apparent, you know, with his ties to the Diamond Stud and Vinny Vegas and, you know, their real life matters. And, you know, we get to a little bit of a kind of a foreshadow of Diamond Dallas Page becoming one of the top stars in WCW and eventually the People's Champion. But all in all, I don't know if this match really did it for me. And imagine, you know, if at the last pay-per-view they did have DDP go over Great Muta, and then on this pay-per-view you have him go over Hacksaw Jim Duggan in the tape fist match. Like, I don't know, it didn't feel like it really connected in there. And I want to say poor Hacksaw having to do his all his different tape spots after John Tenta and Big Bubba did a lot of them already. So
yeah,
I don't know. This match wasn't the greatest, but it was cool that it was shorter. I also want to give a shout out to the crab cam. I don't know if you guys noticed that at the start. There's like the little crab going throughout.
The stage. I did notice that. Yeah.
But yeah, I gave this match about 1.5 stars. It wasn't the greatest, but it was definitely saved by the fact that it was so much shorter than pretty much any other match on the card.
By the way, so we didn't do it for the last match, but the Observer that week gave the John Tenta and Big Bubba Carson City Silver Dollar match a 1.25 stars, and he gave the Diamond Dallas Page Jim Duggan tape fist match for the Lord of the Ring a 1.75 stars. All right, so Gene is in the back with the WCW champion, the Giant, and the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan, hyped for their match against Benoit and Anderson. Gene sets a story for the match as the Horsemen are targeting Sullivan and have a goal of keeping the Giant out of the match. The stipulation of the match is that if anybody can pin Sullivan or the Giant the next night on WCW Monday Nitro, one of the 4 Horsemen will get a WCW World Heavyweight Championship one-on-one match with the Giant. One of the notable things from this interview was Jimmy Hart. Gene makes me laugh as he said Jimmy Hart needs to do him a favor and go brush his teeth. He's just like, Jimmy Hart, do me a favor and go brush your teeth.
He's like, why you little?
Yeah. Back on the arena floor, Lee Marshall, who has also passed away, rest in peace, is with Arn Anderson and Chris Benoit. If they win their tag match, one of the Horsemen get a world title shot on Nitro. Arn talks outsiders as he tells them that they have a tough road and that they have to survive if they can. That they have to survive, and that's what Horsemen do. This is the point where Benoit is doing his silent but violent line, and Chris Benoit should just never speak. He speaks in riddles. He speaks like he's reading off a teleprompter. Just keep Chris Benoit quiet and let him jump off cages and do whatever. But this just didn't work. Nick, do you have any, or Robby, anything on? I mean, Arn's just great when Arn cuts a promo because you feel like he's just a grandpa talking shit. But Benoit was just not good. But,
I do want to give a shout out to Jimmy Hart for getting himself back together following that Carson City Silver Dollar match. But also, one of the things I noticed here is, and I don't know if you guys caught this, if you look on the stage, the backdrop, the sun is in different spots for every match and segment.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
So the stage is so crazy that it's got a freaking day-night cycle in 1996.
Wow.
Yes.
All right, so the next match is the double dog collar match between Public Enemy, who are both dead, and the Nasty Boys. Oh boy, this was a cluster fuck. Man, I couldn't keep up with this with my notes. It was just so it was so crazy. They just fight on the outside. So I'm gonna go with 411 Manias thing here. I'm going to read. Oh man, this is long. So, all right. So, Public Enemy bring tables to the ring, and the two teams just are made to beat each other in crazy brawls. So, Nasty Boys are actually involved in one of my favorite matches of all time: Slamboree '94 versus Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan. We have two referees that look, and it looks like Grunge is being chained to Knobs, and Rocco Rock is being chained to Sags. Tug of war to stop off, and the teams stand off and immediately hit the floor. They go to a split screen, and they're fighting up and down the aisleway into the sand. We get a 2 count in the chaos. Oh, yeah. So who was it? Was it a Sag? Oh, no, it was, I think it was Knobs who went for a cover on the surfboard.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. Yeah, so after that, let me see. Knobs drops an elbow on Grunge on the boardwalk for 2. Tony and Dusty are just along for the ride at this point. They're cracking jokes. Table gets involved as Sag suplexes on Rock. It doesn't break, so Grunge sets it up. Sags delivers a pile driver on the floor. They continue to brawl. They're just brawling, throwing each other into the set, which includes a lifeguard stand, which actually falls down at one point and gets caught on the what was it, Grunge, right? Johnny Grunge. But when
it came crashing down.
When it came crashing down.
It was the plan spot was for Rocco Rock to do one of his
jump, right?
Flip sentons to jump off the lifeguard chair onto Sags. But if you actually kind of look, Sags has already got a trash can lid kind of shielding away from Rocco Rock, but the thing is that chair is not that good to really stand on. And so as he's jumping off, the lifeguard chair is falling, and it catches the chain right there on it, to a point where temporarily one of them actually had to lift up the chair just to continue the match.
And if you notice, that Bash at the Beach banner in the background of the shot here is connected to that lifeguard stand. So this nearly brought the whole stage down.
Yes.
So, Sags chokes Grunge with the chain, chokes Rock with the chain, sets Rock up on the table in the ring. He heads up with an elbow wrapped in the chain and drops it on Rock, but again, the table refuses to break.
I am the table.
Yeah, that had to suck. Things kind of break down. I think the table not breaking had thrown off whatever they had planned. Grunge gets hung up over the rope, and Rock ends up getting clotheslined into the chain. Sag drops the chain on the back of the head, and that's enough for a pin at 11:27. They continue to brawl after the match, and Grunge unloads with a chain shot to the back of Knobs' head while he has his head on the apron. That looked like it completely knocked him out cold. So he hits him with the chain and ends up going through the table as it finally breaks. Winners, Nasty Boys, 11:27. So 411 Mania said this would be classified as entertaining crap as they beat the shit out of each other in whatever they could find. The ending was off due to the table giving them some issues, but this was a solid ECW era garbage brawl that was new to people who never watched ECW. 411 Mania gave it 2.25 stars. I gave it 2.5. What say you, Robby? This was just. I mean, I'm sorry for the fucked up thing, but this is just it. This was just crazy.
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna have to agree with you. It was a clusterfuck for what the Public Enemy was able to do in ECW. That basically made the tag team death match a thing in America at the time. You can honestly tell during this time that Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge was really having an issue trying to adapt to the WCW style. And honestly, teaming up with the Nasty Boys, which the Nasty Boys is one of the greatest WCW tag teams of all time, I think the issue was because both of those teams weren't meshing too well. It was causing a conflict into their in-ring chemistry because it looked, yes, it was brawly, it was messy, and it was one of those things of where, yes, a fight is supposed to be looking messy, but in my opinion, this didn't look like a good kind of messy. You had miscues with the spot with the lifeguard chair that could have actually gotten someone completely hurt because you got a dog collar around your neck at that point. The table not breaking really did mess up what they were trying to go for, but that is also the thing that at this point in time, it's why Public Enemy couldn't really work in WCW or the WWF. Public Enemy was kind of hitting into that territory of what Sabu couldn't do in WCW because he had a brief stint in 1995 with WCW. And you can kind of see that at that point that was the issue. I don't know if what was going backstage at the time. I don't know if the Nasty Boys weren't cool with what Public Enemy was trying to bring. Sure, was it ECW? Okay, but Public Enemy at that point in time had better matches with New Jack and Mustafa Saeed a year before that. And they were able to catch magic, what they were able to do. And to bring in this point, there should have been color in this match. And that is just because the Nasty Boys, Public Enemy, is a double dog collar match. You needed some blood in there to really make it feel like it's the ECW style that you're going for. But to me, this was WCW trying to rip off ECW, and it failed on them for doing so instead of helping the Public Enemy trying to adapt to the style that they're looking for. Out of 10 stars, this is a 2 out of 10. As much as I love both teams, it just wasn't working out well for me. And sure, you had some fun hardcore wrestling, but what is the fun into it if it's just going to look bad, in my opinion?
On my end,
Nick, sorry, I was on mute.
No, you're all good. Honestly, for this match, the dog collar stipulation was interesting. I can't think, and I don't know if commentary mentioned why we went to dog collar. It was kind of interesting if you notice that it was the blonde guy on one team collared up to the blonde guy on the other team, and then the brunette on that team gets collared up to the guy that's also a brunette from the other side. So I thought that was kind of funny, but for me, I had a lot of fun with this match, and this is another match that I enjoyed. The chemistry is very weird between Public Enemy and the Nasty Boys. Like, it was just a brawl, and I felt like instead of dog collar, like, I think what really would have been up their alley, and we saw something similar to this with the brawl they had at Super Brawl earlier in the year, I think like if they did this as Falls Count Anywhere, they would have had a lot more fun, a lot more opportunity to really showcase what their individual styles can do, because they're much more akin to being able to take this fight all throughout the Ocean Center, and I think that would have been really cool to do, and even go into like the backstage area. Like, gosh, imagine if like they did something where they start fighting way too close to where the police are for the Outsiders locker room, and they're like, "No, you got to get away." Like, I don't know. There's just
Oh my God.
I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunity they could have had with a Falls Count Anywhere match, but for what it was, this was fun. I am so happy that they went into the beach stage, and I thought it was really cool the way they were going through there. The poor sandcastle got obliterated. You know, the lifeguard stand, boop, tipped over. I even think about one of my favorite Dusty Rhodes calls of all time, that he got a rubber shark, and like they're beating someone up with a rubber freaking shark.
Oh yeah, he's got a shark, didn't he?
And this was, I don't know. There was something that was off with this match, and I don't know, again, if it was like
the dog collar is very limiting, Nick, because you you can only have two guys fighting each other at the same time. If you got them all just smashing into each other like a car crash on the highway, it would be even better.
Yeah, so I think what they should have done is, instead of the dog collar, because, you know, a dog collar match itself is constricting when it's one-on-one, but you got two sets going on at the same time. So if they would have just, done Falls Count Anywhere, I think that would have been great. But, for what it was, I had fun with it. It was just chaos, and I think that's everything it should have been. Shout out to just that table again. It wouldn't break. And
God, no.
They were bouncing off that. They were doing whatever they could to break it too, and that definitely hurt them the next morning. But all in all, I gave this 3 stars out of 5. Again, it just should have been Falls Count Anywhere.
So the Wrestling Observer newsletter gave this a 1.25 stars.
For once, I'm going to have to agree with Meltzer for once in my life.
Yeah. So after that match, back to Gene standing down the hall from the outside of the dressing room with a bunch of cops between him and the door. Gene spouts off how historic this night is going to be, and in his case, it's not going to end up being hyperbole. So next, we actually had a match that I very much enjoyed, and I've never said that about a Disco Inferno match, and I probably will never say it ever again. So mark this down in your calendars of Mack praising the fucking Disco Fuckface Inferno. With the WCW Cruiserweight Championship match between the aforementioned Disco Inferno and the champion Dean Malenko. So this match is there's a spoiler. Thanks, Nick. No. So this match was basically Disco is a joke. Basically, I mean, I'm not even just saying that as a joke. Like people see him as a joke, and he's been winning matches against jobbers because he's been cockily, doing his dance and everything, But he gets his shot against Dean Malenko, and you can see that there's some sort of character development because he gets the absolute shit beat out of him in this match. Like, I've never seen an ass whooping like this in a long time. But he gets some hope spots in the match where where Dean went for the Texas Cloverleaf, rolled him into a 2 count. Disco's getting some body slams and chops and suplexes, and he gets up and he goes to dance. He starts dancing. He goes, "Oh no, that's right!" And then he'll go for a pin and get 2. And the Brain and Dusty are really putting this over on commentary that if he does not stop dancing, that he needs to be more serious, and that if he, could just focus, he could beat Dean Malenko. But the match is 95% Dean Malenko just beating the shit out of Disco. You can really tell this was kind of an initiation match, welcoming Disco to the company. So the ending is Malenko comes in with the springboard dropkick and sets up for the cloverleaf, but Disco gets a small package for a 2.99999. He looks for a hip toss, but Dean just destroys him with the clothesline. Disco holds the ropes to avoid a dropkick, but can't follow up as Dean hits the double arm powerbomb, followed by the Texas Cloverleaf, and wins in submission at 12:04. It was a heck of a match as Dean showed some great intensity, and Disco had a fight in him. And it showed that if Disco didn't have some fight in him, he would have been completely eaten alive. The announcers did a good job of telling the story that Disco was kind of a joke coming in, but showed great fight and earned some respect. Dean was just too much in the end. You could tell that he was just that Dean was just not fucking around, and Disco is always fucking around. So it was a good match. I ended up giving it 3 3/4 stars. What say you, Robby?
All right, for this match, I'll say this. Between the last Disco Inferno match I ever got to cover on here, which was at Greed, that match was better than this one, in my opinion. Because you got Dean Malenko. Dean Malenko, I am sorry, Dean. But when you got Disco Inferno and that cheesy gimmick with the whole dancing and stuff, and in what world does Dean Malenko not fucking kick his ass? Because Malenko is a man of 1,000 holds. The spots and everything, yeah, sure, they were cool. I mean, I gave this match a 6 out of 10, which is still shocking for Disco, because I'm on the same boat as Mack. I do not like Disco Inferno. I don't even like disco music, for crying out loud. So, as much as I'm going to say that I'm going to keep it short and brief, I'm sorry, Mr. Malenko. Do not come find my house and put me in the cloverleaf, but the blight person won for this match. But I couldn't enjoy it, but at least it was at least meh. I gave it a 6 out of 10. At least Dean Malenko won.
Mm-hmm.
Nick?
I will always think about this match because ever since Disco Inferno, which, by the way, I'll give him credit where credit is due. Disco Inferno wrestled a great match, and he looked really good in that orange. I just think the way, when he calls Dean Malenko Mr. Personality, that's even what I wrote in my notes. I didn't write Dean Malenko, I just wrote Mr. Personality to describe Dean. But this felt like one of the matches that, it showcased what both guys could do. And again, kudos to Disco for being able to be beyond just the joke and the meme that he was leading into it. It was a great way to show, how dominant the Iceman is, but honestly, this is one of those things where I don't know if the crowd was necessarily super into this match, and I feel like that was just an aspect that you're going to have from 3 stipulation matches in a row and then a match like this. And
yeah,
I feel like this was also one of the matches that we probably could have borrowed. Same with the previous bout. We could have borrowed a few minutes from to get Regal and Guerrero onto the card. But it wasn't necessarily a bad match. I like the way that, if Disco's focused, then he can actually wrestle. But when he's, trying to have fun and, dance, then it's his downfall. And I really like that story that they were telling with that. Disco, when he's focused, he was able to find so many ways to counter Malenko's deep moveset. Mm-hmm. And I really wish that they could have gone into something like that a little bit more following this, but all in all, I don't know, this match felt like it was just a little too long for my liking, so I'm giving this 2 out of 5 stars. Would have been better if it was shorter.
All right, so the Wrestling Observer newsletter gave this match 3 1/4 stars. Next up, we have, and Nick, I think you have some notes after this match, so I'd like for you to let the people know. It's actually pretty heartwarming. But
I just wanted to say, Mac, we got Kobashi Inferno.
Oh God, no! Stop it! Get the fuck out of here! No, you know what, Nick? I'm gonna text John right now. You're fucking fired.
Well, guys, this is the end of me on Dirt. You'll see you later.
So next we have Desperado Joe Gomez versus Steve Mongo McMichael with Deborah. McMichael is fresh off a heel turn the previous month, where he joined the Four Horsemen. Gomez charges in and eats some clubbering blows and chops. McMichaels hits a clothesline in the corner, but Gomez fires back. He hits a back elbow, which Mongo has no desire to sell. A crossbody for Gomez gets a 2 count, but Mongo is back up with a bloody lip. Mongo throws some chops in the corner and attacks his midsection. Gomez blocks a buckle shot, but gets kicked in the balls for his trouble right in front of the referee, who doesn't do goddamn jack shit about it. Mongo uses the bottom rope to choke Gomez, as this is the first match that's really the crowd's kind of quiet for. Mongo kicks a field goal for 2. Mongo goes for a sloppy camel clutch and this match is one way too long. And we're only at 3 minutes. Mongo to a sleeper, but thankfully a jawbreaker stops that. Looked like a Stone Cold Stunner from the hard cam. Mongo gets a nasty reverse neck breaker, as that looked rough, but Gomez is out at 2. The announcers continue to hype our main event, which only adds to the drama and intrigue. Gomez gets a small package for a 2 and avoids an elbow. He escapes a pile driver attempt with a backdrop and pounds away on Mongo. He lands several chops and finally sends Mongo to the mat and then catches him with a drop kick. Just an awful sunset flip sequence that nearly botched twice, but thankfully a tombstone by Mongo ends this shit show at 6 minutes and 45 seconds. It was rough. Mongo's only 3 matches into his career. This seemed a lot longer than nearly 7 minutes and had some rough spots. The tombstone was solid though. He would go on to name that the Mongo Spike just a couple of weeks later on Nitro. I gave this match 2 stars. Robby, what about you?
All right, for this match, to me, since it didn't go for so long, I didn't feel like it was right to rate this match. I kind of went what like Cage Match would do when it came to this rating system. But it is kind of sad, too, because this is the first time we're getting to talk about Steve Mongo McMichael after his passing. And just watching this match, this is the first time I watched this match in a while, and then especially right after he passed away. It does hit you in the feels for a little bit, especially for a guy like me who's a football fan that knows about the 1985 Chicago Bears defense being one of the, or if not the greatest defenses of all time to ever win a Super Bowl.
Bear
with
down.
Mongo being right there. And
Blew
the
out my
one thing I
Patriots.
will say is you can definitely tell Mongo is still a little bit green, but however he did try to recover that, it did look rough. But at this point, how many matches had he had at this point? Not
3.
that very much. Like exactly, it was only 3. So he was still trying to maneuver a way to adapt to the professional wrestling lifestyle, especially being retired from football for a little bit at this point. So at that point, I was like, I can't rate this match. It's not fair to Mongo. It's not fair to Joe Gomez. But it was rough. But then again, what you get? Mongo is still green. After playing God knows how long to football for most of your life, going to transition to pro wrestling, it's not easy. It's not like you got Bad Bunny out there or Logan Paul who has transcended every single time. Mongo at this point is still learning.
Yeah. Nick? I know you have some additional information on this, Nick. So give me your rating and then the additional information.
Yeah, so rating-wise, first shout out to the new era Pepe McMichael that they brought out. It was the White Poodle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very different from the one that he was holding during his Nitro commentary days. Mm-hmm. But, we got the story going into it of Joe Gomez constantly having his Nitro debut getting interrupted by the antics of the Four Horsemen. So that was the story going into this match, but the story going out of this match is just as important, if not more important. So before I get to that, I just want to give this match 2 stars. It wasn't the greatest thing. It was a good kind of a cool down from all of the chaos that we had leading up to it, though. But I want to say, when it came to this match, Joe Gomez and commentary, I don't know if they said it on this specific match or if they did it leading up to it. It was a thing where Joe Gomez is a lifelong Chicago Bears fan. And one of the biggest things is Joe Gomez always felt super grateful for this match in particular because it gave him a shot on a major pay-per-view. It got him a spot on one of the most historic events in pro wrestling. And on top of that, the Four Horsemen have always looked after Joe Gomez. He's talked about that in different interviews that you can look up, how Flair and Anderson and Benoit and Mongo all, took care of him. And that meant a lot to him as someone that was a younger wrestler in his own right. He had a huge nightclub background, so I'm sure the Horsemen loved him for that as well. But to Joe Gomez, this was such a cool opportunity to be able to travel and basically sit under the learning tree of the Horsemen. And in particular, again, he's got this relationship with Mongo, who's someone that he grew up loving from, Super Bowl 20, the legendary Chicago Bears team of the 80s. And just the fact that he's able to be there with his hero is something that always meant a lot to him, so much so that Joe Gomez would do a lot for different charities. He's got a Native American ancestry, and he would do different charity work for Native American communities. And also, even though he's a Florida guy, he would do stuff here in Chicagoland. And because it's Chicagoland, who else would help? Here comes Mongo. And, Steve McMichael and Joe Gomez still had that relationship. Even Flair and Joe Gomez still have a relationship. I'm sure probably Arn and some of the others do. But when Steve McMichael was in his fight with ALS, especially in these later years, we've seen how many of his former Chicago Bears would be there visiting him. And we saw a couple wrestlers like Ric Flair would come in all the time to visit with Mongo. One of the names a lot of people don't talk about is Joe Gomez. Joe Gomez visited Mongo a lot, and it had to do with how much he loved Mongo and respected him for, choosing him to have this match with on this major pay-per-view, and for, being someone that he can really, connect to, because, both guys are relatively newer, especially when it came to just being in the company. And it's such a lifelong friendship that literally went for Joe Gomez visiting Mongo in his dying days.
Yeah, when you told me that, Nick, that was really that was some really great added on info to because I think this match is lost to history because of the main event. Yeah. So just getting some of that additional information, maybe somebody hearing this will be like, hey, let me look more into that. Let me look into some like charities and stuff. So. Good on him. Good on Joe Gomez. I'm sure he was devastated when Mongo unfortunately passed away last month. Rest in peace, Mongo. Throw them Forza boys. Throw them Forza boys. So now, before I say this, people are probably going to get mad, but this is 1996 Meltzer. He gave the match -1.5.
Ooh.
Yeah. So So getting back to the show. We're in the locker room as Gene is with Miss Elizabeth, woman, and Ric Flair. It's depressing to know that 3/4 of these people in the segment have passed away. Miss Elizabeth is great with the heel turn and is gorgeous. Gene falling for woman in each of these segments is always a highlight. Rick not only hypes the match with Conan, but also praises Mongo and puts over the Benoit Anderson angle. He also mentions that Savage has big plans tonight, but he should stop looking at the camera and praying that Liz will come back home, because it's never going to happen. Flair with these two and Gene are awesome. Like, Gene had like his hand like almost on fucking woman's ass during this, and then he pulls his hand away. He's like, stop doing that to me.
That was funny whenever a woman would hang on Mean Gene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Nancy Benoit was just gorgeous. Nancy Sullivan, Nancy Benoit was just gorgeous. So up next we have the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship match. With Conan and Ric Flair with woman and Miss Elizabeth. This match was long, guys. Yeah. Conan's doing all of his triple R spots with Flair. He does he's not toss your salad and peel your potatoes and calling people strawberries yet, Conan. But he's still, he's still in fairly decent shape, even though it looks like he was really trying to stop a wound on the back of his head from like exploding with that bandage. But this match was just Conan being distracted by woman and being distracted by Miss Elizabeth. Conan's doing all his things, firing up with chops, body slams, suplexes. He did the rolling clothesline, which was awesome, but Flair sold it like he died. The ending of the match is Flair going up top, and he gets slammed off the top rope, and Dusty says he has a real bad habit of doing that, baby. When Flair takes the Flair bump onto his side because his back got fucked up in the plane crash in the 70s. Rolling clothesline from Conan gets 2. That's the one where Flair looks like he died off of it. Liz gets on the apron as Conan has the match won. Woman gets a shoe and decks Conan with the heel after Flair landed a backbreaker. Flair covers and even puts his foot all the way up on the top rope, so he is at like an obtuse angle, which is crazy. And beats Conan for the United States Championship at 15 minutes and 40 seconds. And like Nick said earlier, this was a punishment for Conan going off script at a WCW event and chastising fans for chanting ECW to the point where a very, very heel Kevin Sullivan had to get on the mic and break kayfabe and tell the crowd that they weren't bad and that they actually liked ECW. Yeah, it was kind of a clash of styles here, and it was a little bit of a struggle, but ended up being solid. Flair cheating to win is always great, and the ball shot by Woman was one for the ages. So I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. I love watching Ric Flair, especially short-haired Ric Flair in this kind of 95, 96 era. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna bump this up. I'm gonna give it 3 1/4 stars because I just love Miss Elizabeth and Woman. I think they're a great team. So, what say you, Robby?
As you said, it was a clash of styles between Conan and Ric Flair. You had the biggest star in Mexico taking on one of the greatest of all time at this point. And the first thing I'm going to say, too, this is a rare sighting of Ric Flair even holding a mid-card title out of any company. It was not much you saw Ric Flair, who was a huge star, always on the top, always the main event. He was the marquee name you wanted to see. You wanted to see the Nature Boy. And there's only been a couple of times in WWE they did that with him for the tag team title and the Intercontinental title. But WCW, him being United States champion, it was not really that heard of. So seeing that, it's a rare case of him winning. As we now know, it was because of a punishment. But you always got what you got with Ric Flair. He's the dirtiest player of the game, ending it off with the dirty finish. And Woman, being classic Woman, because this is the stuff that she would do in ECW to help Sandman to win. Seeing her take off the heel and hitting that. So at that point, it's awesome to see her do that, even though it's weird seeing Woman paired with Ric Flair, considering at that point in time, you were used to seeing her with Sandman for almost 2, 3, 4 years. And Miss Elizabeth as well. It's weird seeing her turning heel at this point in time, joining Flair, concerning the history between Ric Flair and Macho Man Randy Savage for WrestleMania. So at that point in time, the match itself, Mesh Styles, it got going. At first it was a little rough, but Ric Flair, he can sell anything. And I mean anything. He can just sell a flick in your forehead and he will oversell the hell out of this. So to me, I watched and I relaxed. I didn't take much notes off of this. I love this match to a T. To me, this was a great way to help Conan build what he's going to become in WCW later on. And come on, it's Ric Flair. Out of 10 stars, I gave this a 7.5.
You know, I saw this on one of Not That Tom Green's live streams. Someone pointed this out. You have Woman and The Man. That was always a little interesting thing, which I wonder if that was by design at all. But this was the era when, you know, Conan's got that really ridiculous attire. But, you know, this was really cool to see 2 top dogs literally going at it. And even though it was meant to be a punishment, I did enjoy this match for what it was as like a technical standpoint. I think one of the biggest issues, though, is this felt like one of those matches where, again, it was just a little too long. This could have been a match that easily could have been either cut in half, or we could have donated some of this time to, again, get Regal and Guerrero or the tag team title match onto the main card. But all in all, you know, it's really cool to see Ric Flair as the United States champion, which, by the way, it was kind of interesting because Conan defeated One Man Gang for the U.S. title, who got the title randomly at Starrcade 95 from Kensuke Sasaki. So this was such a wild, like, travel between U.S. champions, and then unfortunately Ric Flair ends up vacating the U.S. title due to injury, which I think he announces that at World War III. But the match itself here was fun. It was a little too long for my liking, but all in all, for what it was, solid. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5.
All right. So the Wrestling Observer newsletter actually gave this match 2.5 stars. So we head to the back, and Mean Gene is outside the door of the Outsiders and is doing his best to eavesdrop. He mentions that he heard a voice that was very familiar, but it was muffled. Tony tells Gene that he has no idea who it is when Tony presses him about it. He says he says blatantly, "Yeah, I know that voice, but it was muffled, and I know I've heard it before, but I can't make out who it is." Heaney wants Gene to offer money to the cops to see if they'll talk. Gene mentions he still hasn't heard anything from Bischoff. Again, these segments are just laying it on thick with the drama of suspense, and it's well worth it.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Yeah. So we are at the semi-main event of this show, which is the Dungeon of Doom, the Giant, the WCW World Heavyweight Champion, and the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan, versus the Four Horsemen of Chris Benoit and the Enforcer, Arn Anderson. The stipulation here is if the Horsemen win, a member of their group gets a title match on Nitro against the Giant. So Sullivan and Giant jump the Horsemen in the aisle while they make their entrances, and it's on. Just a massive brawl in the aisle with Anderson getting blasted with a chair by Sullivan. Mongo heads out and hits Giant with a briefcase, which draws him to the back, leaving Sullivan alone with the Horsemen in the ring. Benoit and Sullivan continue their war as the Giant heads back to the ring. Again, the story is simple. The Horsemen are good when Sullivan is in the ring and know that they're toast if the Giant gets the tag. Excuse me. Sullivan gets trapped in the wrong corner and gets double-teamed. He gets sent to the floor, where he and Benoit fight some more. Benoit sends him headfirst into the rail, but Sullivan makes his own comeback, pulls Arn out to the floor, and sends him into the railing. Back into the ring, Arn grabs a leg and makes a tag to Benoit. He throws some chops, and again, Sullivan is getting smoked in the corner. Rabbit punches by Benoit. Anytime Sullivan shows signs of life, the Horsemen cut him off and bring him back into his corner. Benoit sets up for a superplex, but Giant is in, so Benoit tries a crossbody, but doesn't go well for him. Giant throws Benoit on Anderson, but Sullivan can't make the tag. Benoit unloads with right hands and talks some trash. Sullivan gouges Benoit's eyes. Anderson is back in for a few 2 counts. Sullivan gets a low blow, but Benoit gets a tag to stop any chance of the Giant getting in. Back to Anderson as he preps for a spike pile driver, but Anderson turns it into a slingshot that sends Arn into Benoit. Sullivan with the belly to back, and a hot tag is made to the Giant, and the crowd explodes. Anderson and Benoit bail to the floor. Benoit and Sullivan brawl by the announce table while the Giant finishes off Arn with the chokeslam at 8:02 for the win. Benoit and Taskmaster fight to the announce position. Benoit dives off of it onto Sullivan, onto the sand. The Giant is gone while Arn is quivering mess in the ring. Benoit takes Sullivan back up to the ring into the top rope and hits the Bryan Danielson back suplex into the ring. But here comes Woman, who they say is Nancy. Did they say she was Nancy Sullivan or Nancy Benoit? Because I know they dead name her in this. They go, "Oh, that's Nancy."
I thought it was Nancy Sullivan, they said.
Yeah.
So it says Woman is back out trying to talk some sense into Benoit on Sullivan's behalf, but this is where things get kind of sad and icky. The Giant is out to run everybody off and carries Sullivan to the back over his shoulder. This was a mess, but it was a good kind of mess.
Mm-hmm.
You know? My thing is basic tag match with a good story. The Horsemen did all they could do to keep Sullivan in the match, but it failed in the end rather quickly. The Horsemen will not be getting a title shot against the Giant. 2 3/4 stars. Robby, what about you, buddy?
For me, the match itself, as you said, it was messy, but a good kind of messy. Honestly, this is how it should have went. It should have been the Giant taking on Anderson, choke slamming him, getting a pin. The hot tag got a nice pop out of it because at this point in time, Giant is your World Heavyweight Champion, so you want to build him big, especially at a time where Benoit isn't ready yet. Arn is on his way out as well. And plus, it was just on a Nitro, and you needed to build a nice, bigger feud for the next pay-per-view for Giant to set his feet into. But however, the one thing, I'm going to rate the match at a 5.5 out of 10. But however, I wanted to talk more about the whole Sullivan and Benoit thing, because that is the thing I wanted to talk about. A part of me believes this was actually a shoot, because Nancy was the one who was coming out. Giant is coming back, and as Sullivan and Benoit are still brawling, they finally break up. You hear Giant yell, "What are you doing?" repeatedly every time. And if memory serves correct, Nancy was still married to Kevin at the time, but I think it's according to the Dark Side of the Ring, maybe this is the time where Nancy's starting to have the affair with Benoit, and Sullivan knows, and this is why they shot. I think this was like an actual, whether it was for the match, if it is, great for working the crowd, but this looked like a little bit of a shoot mess of what's going on backstage between the three of them.
Remember, too, even Arn Anderson tries to check on Sullivan at one point, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a previous brawl before this at a Nitro. I think the Nitro might have actually been in Boston, where they brawled all over the building and even like up into the bathroom and stuff like that, and down the stairs. Even before they got it it was a 5-minute brawl in the concession stand, even before they got in the ring. And I think that was in Boston because the crowd was really behind Sullivan, who was from Boston.
Don't forget Great American Bash, too. That was the whole big point for that feud going into this show.
What did you rate this match, Robby?
I rated it a 5.5 out of 10.
Okay.
Not too bad. It wasn't too bad, but like I said, it was. The only issue was for me in this match was trying to pay attention to everything and the little details, and it was just because I just couldn't get behind this tag team match at all.
Nick?
Yeah. For me, this was another match I had fun with in its own way. There's a lot of like very interesting moments, and I think that when you have like a bunch of different interesting moments, kind of is what you watch this one for, not so much for a decent match. Because you got 4 wrestlers who, in their own right, in different ways, can put on a great match, but it just match-wise wasn't the greatest here. However, I really appreciated the way that it seemed like the Horsemen were going into this with a strategy, because you get that world title shot on the line here, and I wish that was really emphasized a whole lot more. But you got Mongo going out of his way to have the Giant chase him, which, again, it makes sense. You want the guy that's got the football background who can run to have the Giant chase him.
Yeah.
And while that's going on, then you've got 2-on-1 situation right here with Benoit and Arn Anderson being able to just, do whatever they want. But it's not like they were just toying with Sullivan. They were trying, and they were working together rapidly in a fast pace to try to get Kevin Sullivan pinned as soon as they could, because they didn't want the Giant to come back. But when the Giant did manage to come back and he thwarted the Horsemen's whole strategy, man, did the roof come off of the Ocean Center. Giant, without a doubt, got one of the biggest reactions of the night. And on top of that, too, it makes sense because, this guy's the world champion. And when we think about what's going to be following the upcoming main event bout, coming up at Hog Wild the following month in August, Giant is going to be representing WCW. So I think this might have been a strategic way to get a whole lot of momentum as a face for the Giant. And it was very interesting to see, though, the crowd being behind the Dungeon of Doom over the 4 Horsemen. And I also want to say, too, it was kind of hard to watch that one part, now in hindsight, mind you, where woman runs in and she's yelling and pleading for Chris Benoit to stop. It's very hard to watch that nowadays.
Yeah.
But
it really is.
But to kind of break the tension there, it was funny to see Benoit taking Sullivan back to the ring after they were fighting up along the commentary area and the sand. And you just see the Giant walking to the back.
Yeah.
And they go completely missing what's happening there. And they do get in the ring, and that's where we get this finale where the Giant runs back in, again, to a fantastic reaction. And the way he picks up Kevin Sullivan, because Kevin Sullivan's a shorter guy, but he's very stocky. And Giant just lifts him up like a child and just carries him, over the rope and walks to the back. And it just shows, again, the power and who they had in the Giant. And it kind of sucks that after this title run, we really don't get much more from a huge push for the Giant, because he is such a great talent, even as far back as this. Because when you think about it, he debuted in Halloween Havoc 95? Yeah. And he fast forward, and we're only in July following that October. And he's, once again, a world champion, and a pretty well-refined one at that at this point, too. So shout out to the Giant. I love the Giant, and it was really cool to see this. I'm giving the match 3.5 out of 5 stars. Very much a fun brawl with a lot of little interesting bits going into it.
Yeah, that Giant guy should really sign with WWF and then go bald and cry and shit his pants on TV for fucking 20 years.
Turn back and forth a lot, call him Big Nasty.
Yeah. Guys, we're here.
2 hours later, we're here.
Oh, Nick, you and your fucking the Pasta Mania one from the
I'm
friggin'
scared.
from the first Nitro, and now this one, you got me again. You son of a fucking bitch.
Da-da-da-da-da-da. It's the third man. I can't believe Mabel would do that.
So guys, I don't think we need to focus on the match here because the match was whatever. Luger gets taken out while Sting goes for a Stinger Splash on Nash and hurts his neck.
Television champion Lex Luger.
Yes, and gets taken out of the match, and Macho comes in with a hot tag, and runs wild, and then Nash hits him with the ball shot. Of course, we're talking about the Outsiders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash and Mystery Partner versus Sting, Macho Man, and Total Package Lex Luger. So during the course of the end of this match, Macho Man comes in. He's a house of fire. He's running around. Double axe handle here, double axe handle there. Back in the ring, Hall eats one, and Nash stopped with the ball shot. And then we get, oh wait, who's that? That's Hulk Hogan. That's Hulk Hogan, brother.
Go get him,
Now,
baby.
let me ask you guys. Get him, Hulkster. Yeah, but whose side is he on?
Oh, what are
Now,
you
wait.
talking about? Whose side is he?
Now, let me
What are
ask you
talking
guys.
about?
With Heenan's history of never, ever trusting Hogan, did you mind this line? Did you feel like
honestly
it
didn't
spoiled
mind
it?
it.
Did you feel like it spoiled it?
No, not at all. Bobby
No,
Heenan's
not at
never liked, never trusted Hogan, and this was
Yeah.
just an extension of that.
And hell, and even with the logic of it too, Heenan could have just thought, "Oh, Hogan just must be out there for himself." as
And
well.
remember what Heenan says. Heenan says at the end, I tried to tell you guys, I told you for years.
Mhm.
And he's like, like trying to put himself over. So Hogan comes down to the ring, rips off his shirt. He's just in his bandana. He walks over. He chases the Hall and Nash out of the ring. He pushes what was the referee's name?
Oh, was that Pee Wee Anderson?
Pee Wee Anderson. Pushes
Think so,
Pee Wee
yeah.
Anderson out of the way and leg drops the Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh, you dastardly Hulk Hogan. Oh, you son of a bitch.
Freaking cowboy boots.
He leg drops him
Why,
three or
Hogan?
four.
Why?
Yeah. Leg drops him 3 or 4 more times. Throws the referee out of the ring. Pee Wee Anderson goes flying through the middle ropes. Looks like he died. And Hall gets down for the Frock's 3 count. And Tony says, we're not even going to entertain that as a 3 count fan. We need everybody out of the locker room right now to kick his butt. Where is WCW? And the match ends in a no contest at 16:55 with no bell to end it. Now, guys, I know we're 2.5 hours in, but we had planned on doing like a 3 or 4 hour podcast. So I'm going to go over the entire Hogan promo for you guys. I have it right here. I have the transcript as a little
Give it to us.
surprise.
Give it to us, brother.
Give it to his brother.
Yep. So Gene goes, Hulk Hogan, what in the world are you thinking? Hogan says, Mean Gene, first off, you need to tell these people to shut up if you want to hear what I'm going to say. Gene says, I've been with you a long time, so many years, Hulk, and you join up with the likes of these 2 men absolutely makes me sick to my stomach. And I think these people here, a lot of these people around the world, have just about enough of these men. This men, pointing to Nash and Hall. And you want to put yourself in this group? Well, the first thing you got to realize, brother, is this right here is the future of wrestling. You call this the New World Order of Wrestling, brother. These 2 men right here came from a big organization up north, and everybody was wondering who the third man was. Well, who knows more about the organization than me, brother? Gene says, you have made the wrong decision, my friend, in my opinion. Hogan says, well, let me tell you something. I made that organization a monster. I made the people rich up there. I made people that ran that organization rich, brother. When it all came to pass, the name Hulk Hogan, the man Hulk Hogan, got bigger than that organization. And the billionaire Ted, amigo, he wants to talk turkey with Hulk Hogan. Billionaire Ted promised me movies. Billionaire Ted promised me millions of dollars, brother. And Billionaire Ted promised me world caliber matches. As far as Billionaire Ted, Eric Bischoff and the whole WCW goes, I'm bored, brother. That's why these guys here, the so-called outsiders, these men right here I want as my friends. They're the new blood of professional wrestling, brother. And not only are we going to take over the whole wrestling business with Hulk Hogan and the new blood, then the monster's here with me. We'll destroy everything in our path, me and Gene. And Gene says, look at all this crap in the ring. This is what the future holds for you if you want to hang around with the likes of these men, Hall and this man Nash. Hogan says, as far as I'm concerned, all of this crap in the ring represents these fans, brother. For 2 years, I held my head high. I did everything for the charities. I did everything for the kids. And the reception I got when I came out here, well, you fans can stick it, brother. Because if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, you people wouldn't even be here. If it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff would still be selling meat from the back of a truck in Indianapolis. And if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan and these Johnny-come-latelys that you see out here wrestling, wouldn't be here either, brother. I was selling out the world while these guys were bumming gas to put in their cars to get to high school. So the way that it is now, brother, with Hulk Hogan and this new world organization wrestling, brother, and the new blood by my side, what you gonna do when the new world organization runs wild on you? What you gonna do, brother? And he grabs Gene, and Gene says, hey, don't touch me. I got a fleet of lawyers. Tony, Bobby, Dustin, damn it. Back to you. And Bobby says, and Tony says, all right, we've seen the end of Hulkamania. For Bobby the Brain Heenan, for Dusty Rhodes, Gene Okerlund, I don't know. I'm Tony Schiavone. Hulk Hogan, as far as I'm concerned, you can go to hell. We're out of here. Straight to hell. Slams the headset, and you can see Hogan, Nash, and Hall celebrating as the crowd continues as they walk off of the commentary set. Man, this is just it's just filet mignon.
Mm-hmm.
It's filet mignon in the world's most expensive restaurant.
Wrapped in bacon.
Hulk Hogan, not always being. I mean, he was a great promo guy, but it was more his charisma that got over more than the words that he was saying. Because remember that Trump Plaza, I'm going to burn Trump Plaza down and Trump's going to grab my hand, and like all that shit, you know. But man, this is just amazing, man. This is what changed wrestling. Whatever you want to say about Hulk Hogan in 2025, you want to say he's a racist, you want to say he's MAGA, you want to say all this shit, totally valid. Understand why you don't hate, why you hate him. Understand why he gets booed now. But without this, without Eric Bischoff, without Hall and Nash, without Hulk Hogan, wrestling doesn't look like it does today in 2025. Still to this day. I would even say that, you know, the NWO spawned groups like the Bullet Club.
Yeah.
I mean, they took the Too Sweet. They took the language from Hogan, you know, like, oh, got to keep kayfabe, brother, you know. And this might be a little bit of a stretch, but without Hulk Hogan, maybe there's not a Tony Khan to maybe, how do I put this delicately without hurting feelings? You know, fuck it. There's no Tony Khan to say, hey, WCW made a run at it. Let me try. WCW was revolutionary.
Right.
I could probably, you know, I can succeed where WCW failed, you know? Because Tony has gone on record saying that once WCW died, he became an independent wrestling fan all the way up, you know, from 2002 to Ring of Honor until 2021 when 2021 when Ring of Honor like dissipated and, you know, became part of AEW now. The death of WCW could have indirectly sparked a promotion like AEW, you know, to compete with WWE, to be the competition, to do things correctly where Eric Bischoff failed. And I mean, you could say anything about this promo. It sparked everything. I mean, I have no words. It's just, it's perfect. It's just a chef's kiss. So, Robby, I don't even need your thoughts on the match, Robby, because the match was I just need your thoughts on everything post-match.
When it came to that post-match, it was literally the inevitable happened. At this point, you look at now present day, we never thought John Cena was going to turn back to being a heel. It was the same thing when it said about Hulk Hogan. Because Hogan was one of those guys who, yeah, he was getting your downside guarantees. He was making $1 million off a salary at this point. But he also was hesitant to turn heel because of the merchandise sales. He was afraid that it was going to decrease. That was one thing I mentioned earlier when it came to being the heel in the 90s. But however, the night that Hulkamania died, in my opinion, Hulkamania died as soon as he went and retired temporarily and went to do Thunder in Paradise. Because when he came back, sure, he got the ovation, but eventually the Hulkamania gimmick, it was getting stale. Hogan needed something new, and the NWO was a way to reinvent who Hogan was. Now, when I say it, I am going to be point blunt. I don't like Hogan as a person. Personally, if I grew up during that era, I would have been a Randy Savage fan more than of a Hogan guy. But here's the thing. For the first time ever, I'm going to say something nice about Hogan. And this is more towards of the character Hulk Hogan. I think without turning Hogan heel, not only would it have maybe killed his career a lot sooner, but the NWO, Hall and Nash, they needed Hogan to be the third man. Because at that point, not only did that cement of what was going to happen, without Hogan joining the NWO, we would have gotten in an Attitude Era. Without Hogan
Yeah,
in
no,
the NWO,
they absolutely made WWF pivot, Robby.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Without Hogan, as Mack had said, there would have never been an AEW. Because WCW would have never died. It just would have went out sooner. And God knows if we would be talking about WCW or even WWE, because at that point, they were in the shithole. We don't even know if they would have ever gotten their popularity to rise. And plus, I'm also going to say this. Without Hogan, there would have never been a TNA. It's one of those Mandela effects of what if Hogan never would have joined. And to me, this is one of the greatest, if not a lot of people say this is the greatest heel turn in history, because you never saw it coming. Everyone saw it was going to be Luger. Everyone thought it was going to be Sting, Savage, Warrior. It didn't matter. But someone who went and said, say your prayers and eat your vitamins for almost 15 plus years on the run of Hulkamania. Look at people looking up to Hogan as a character, as a role model, having a cartoon built off of him, having WrestleMania built off of him, to there again turn on the fans and just shit their dreams away. But here's the kicker though. Because of what Hogan did, it made it cool to cheer the bad guy. It made it cool to cheer for the heels. Because now at that point in time, you had after that, there were so many NWO fans at that point who were behind it, and you were supposed to be booing the NWO. It started a whole movement that would launch D-Generation X, and DX wouldn't be nothing without NWO. And also, I'm going to point this out. Not only do I give this whole promo a 10 out of 10, besides Hogan saying New World Organization, but I'm guessing that was because they didn't know it was going to be New World Order yet, because they still didn't come up with a name. But if you look, and you look back, and I look back at the crowd for the first time ever, not only was there fans throwing trash at Hogan and Hall and Nash, there were fans in the background who were cheering for this because they were waiting for the day to Hogan to finally turn heel.
Including a guy in an ECW shirt.
Exactly. Yeah. And to me, this is the greatest heel moment of all time besides John Cena's heel turn. And it's because you never would have seen it coming. Not even when you start watching out Hulk Hogan's career. If you watched it from the very beginning, yes, he was a heel, but behind Vincent Kennedy McMahon, he was never going to turn heel. Even in WCW, he's what brought WCW those ratings. And that's what helped Ted Turner build that empire with Eric Bischoff. It was Hogan. The reason why
18
WWF was plummeting is because they lost Hogan.
18 months. 18 months
Exactly.
WCW was on top.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Nick, before you give me your thoughts on this, the Kevin Sullivan Giant and the Horseman match got 2 stars, and this final handicap tag match got 3 stars from Meltzer. So, Nick,
Perfect.
I would love to hear, because, I mean, I've heard it from you before. We've talked about it before, but just watching it again and having the original VHS tape, I want to hear your commentary.
So one of the points I want to bring here, and real quick, I want to just say, the lead up into this was just as phenomenal as the landing. And I think that's one of the biggest and hardest things in professional wrestling. When you're telling a great story, sometimes you could start off great, but you just don't stick the landing. Other times, we probably could have done a little bit better with this, but hey, at least that ending was phenomenal. This instance was honestly both barrels. When you had Scott Hall interrupting Steve Dahl versus Mauler Mike Enos, like, no one anticipated what was going to happen. No one anticipated that this is going to change the landscape of professional wrestling and even pop culture, because look at what WCW did here. That kickstarted a whole revolution for pro wrestling that then changes what so many people were doing in pop culture and just in culture at the time.
Yeah.
This whole match, even look at the whole show itself, you could argue has done a lot for this, but in particular, when you look at this match, I want to mention the lead up into the match. You had 3 units, 3 of the top stars. You, of course, have Sting representing Team WCW. Like, when you picture WCW, honestly, I think everyone will say the first guy that they think of is Sting. And then on top of that, we mentioned this a little earlier. We had the feud with Luger and Savage over the last, 9-10 months. And those 2 guys, an ego like Luger and a crazy guy like Savage, put their differences aside to join forces and work together with Sting to defend the honor and the sanctity of World Championship Wrestling up against these invaders. I thought that was the coolest thing. I love that trope of, enemies that put their differences aside. And, one of the points a lot of people don't look at too is the lottery that led into this. It was a 6-man lottery to determine who was going to represent WCW. It was a couple of weeks prior on an episode of Nitro. The 6 names were, of course, the 3 that we have here. But it was based on win-loss records. So they also included the Giant, Ric Flair. Both guys would have also made sense on the team, Giant being a world champion, Ric Flair also being synonymous with WCW if you're not thinking about Sting. And the 6th man. Who's the 6th man? Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan, yeah.
So those 6 guys were all in the running to potentially be in there. And it's one of those things where it's like, gosh, imagine a world where you had someone from that wasn't selected in here. But I love the way that we have Sting, Luger, and Savage uniting and working together, because in the weeks leading up to it, you have them in trios action up against VK Wall Street, Mike Enos, and Dirty Dick Slater. And then you also have them taking on the Dungeon of Doom's Max Muscle, Ming, and Barbarian. I love that aspect of they're taking this so seriously. They're going up against veterans in, Wall Street, Enos, and Slater. And they're also going up against big, tough guys in Max Muscle, Ming, and Barbarian. Like, they were taking this seriously, 100%. And that whole aspect in there, Luger's a champion. He's the TV champion. And if, the outsiders didn't interrupt, Luger would have been a double champ going into this. Sting would have been one half of the tag champs. And, Savage is used to big combat, right? He won World War III a few months prior, back in November. And then you have the outsiders, who are these Hellraisers. If you were watching the other show, or at least listening to Bischoff rattle off the results of the other show, you knew that these guys were a big deal. And you might even remember them from years prior. But one of the other aspects to think of is 13 years prior. At this point in time, it was 13 years since anyone saw Hulk Hogan as a heel. And on top of that, not only did 13 years prior to this Hulk Hogan become a face, he became the face of professional wrestling, but he also became, honestly, one of the faces that you can argue was a face of the 1980s itself. So
Mhm.
many
Oh, yeah.
people that were sitting in that crowd remember Hulk Hogan when they were a kid, when they were
Yep.
watching, growing up, experiencing peak
Mhm.
Hulkamania in the 80s. And now they see, 90s, their culture is changing completely. They're more, anti-establishment. And then you see Hulk Hogan, of all people, turning heel and becoming another one of those anti-establishment faces. It's just like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
And again, like, it was something that it caused Tony Schiavone to end the show by saying Hulk Hogan can go to hell. We heard Mean Gene Okerlund cussing, which we pretty much never heard that before.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like, this completely changed the game. On top of that, it was cut from all the releases. You can kind of see a little bit of this on the VHS release. You even had a fan try to jump in there before he just gets the boots put to him by Hall and
Oh,
Nash.
yeah. I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah, so like, people took this seriously, and I've seen, garbage thrown into a wrestling ring before, and WCW has had that happen numerous times, but none of it ever compared to the amount of garbage that was being thrown in there. And I almost think that some people were throwing it to kind of jump in on it, but also I think it's a way of symbolically saying, we're going out with the old and in with the new, because I think everyone knew
Mhm.
that this was something new and this was something different. And honestly, I'm looking right now, how many people were there? About 8,300 at the Ocean Center in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Mhm.
I think all 8,300 people there experienced not just wrestling history, but they just experienced pure history.
Yeah. So,
And
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I actually do want to add something too. And that too, you're adding on to the attendance too. The buy rate to this pay per view, it wasn't good at all.
Right.
I looked at it; it was like it was under. I think it was like, I don't know exactly the number. I think it was like a 0.3 something on a buy rate according to Cage Match, and it was not a good buy rate at all. So a lot of people missed out on watching the pay per view live. So basically, it was, if you weren't there or if you didn't order the pay per view, a lot of people missed this moment in professional wrestling and had to go back to watch it on VHS at this point.
Buy rate was 0.71, Rob.
That's what I thought.
Which,
Yeah.
I'm looking right now at like just a historical list of WCW buy rates. That's the slightest bit better, like literally 0.01 points better than Uncensored 96, which was a colossal letdown and
Mhm.
failure of a show.
Oh, yeah. So, guys, this had to be this should have and has been the longest podcast that we've done. But just
But it was
in
worth it.
just in
Absolutely.
summation,
History.
overall for a show, I'll go with Nick first. Nick, as a show, overall out of 10, what are you giving this show, just based on everything, matches and the ending?
I think a lot of people go into this thinking that, it's such a historic show. It's got to be like, top to bottom, an incredible card, but not really. But when you really think about it, and if you were watching and experiencing WCW at the time, like we were, it's very much a product of what wrestling was at the time for the whole card, top to bottom. And it just so happened to have a groundbreaking historical moment at the end of the show.
Yeah.
And, all in all, for me personally, I'm very much an ADHD type of wrestling fan. I need a lot of different things. And I think this show had a little something for everyone. If you want great technical, matches and great technical bouts, guess what? You got Rey Mysterio and Psychosis, right? You got everything from the skill set of Malenko and Flair going into their respective matches. But if you want crazy chaos and pandemonium, hey, there's the double dog collar match that goes all over the arena. You've got a wild match with Giant, and Sullivan versus Arn and Benoit. There's just so many different elements to this show. And again, top to bottom, and even the pre-show delivered in its own ways, there's a lot of fun that can be had here. And I think every time I watch this show, I end up noticing something I never saw before. I end up finding out something new when I look into this match. And I guarantee, as we think about this show for years to come, still new stuff's going to come to light. There's still going to be so many more things that people are going to bring up, and it's like, oh yeah, you know what, I do see that. Like I was thinking earlier, like imagine if Psychosis doing all those leg drops was almost a foreshadow for what was to come at the end of the show. But
oh my god, I know.
could you imagine? But like, you know, all in all, not just because this took place on July 7th, you know, 7/7 of 96, but I'm going to give this show a whole 7 out of 10. I thought this was a fantastic show. You're not going to be disappointed if you watch it. Just don't go into it expecting that every single match is going to be a perfect 10. But all in all, this is a match, and this is a whole show, a whole pay-per-view, a whole card that you're going to want to go into and just watch for the history of it. You know, it's like Godfather 1 and 2. You just need to watch it. You know, it's a very important piece of media, not just in wrestling, but it's an important piece of media for pop culture as a whole.
All right, Robby, give me your final summation on the show.
For me, the show overall, I've been battling it with it for the last week on what I wanted to give it. At first, I wanted to give it a 6. Then I was like, no, how about a 7? And I'm like, no. You had an amazing opener with Mysterio and Psychosis that basically showcased what Lucha Libre is all about to the American fans. Aside from the Silver Dollar match, which sure Tenta won, and the shit show into the whole thing with blanking out real quick. I'm back on it. The Carson City Steel Dollar match between Big Bubba and Tenta. But not, and then the double dog collar match between Public Enemy and the Nasty Boys. That was your rough stuff of the night. But to me, it started to pick up a little bit with DDP and Hacksaw. And then it went and head into a fantastic United States title match. Sure, I didn't enjoy the co-main event, but however, though, there is some significance to, especially what we learned from the dark side of the ring as well, there is some significance behind that match now, in my opinion, to the greatest moment of all, one of the greatest moments of all time for pro wrestling. I had no choice but to give it an 8 just because of the opener, the hostile takeover, and all the little caveats. Like Nick said, you gotta watch it. It's one of those things of history where you have to watch it for yourself to believe of what we're talking about. This event in itself, because of Hogan and the NWO, is going to be talked about, and it's upcoming on their 30-year anniversary. It's going to be talked about even 30 years later. It's going to be there within the span of time, because this was history in professional wrestling. So that's why I gave it an 8 out of 10. It is just solely because it was history made.
All right, so I was struggling with it too, much like Robby was. I was wavering on a 7 or a 7.5, but when it ultimately came down to it, I didn't want to unalive myself watching this show like I did with like Greed, even though I did, enjoy Greed. So I'm going to give this a 7.5 because, even though some of the match quality did lack, the ending's just top tier. A+, 10s across the board. So yeah, my final thing is a 7.5. I enjoyed the show. Sometimes I have a little bit of a problem when watching a show like this where I will just skip to the end because I'm like, all right, let's just get rid of all this is all bullshit. It doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. Let's get to the end. But I loved the way that the commentary team built this up all night and went backstage and showed the cops, and you saw the cops surrounding ringside, and it felt like it was a literal hostile takeover. So being there and watching it in real time and then going back and watching it again, which I haven't done in like almost 30 years, because I was 13. I just turned 14 when that show came on. So watching it again and reliving the anticipation, like, it got me excited again. I was like, oh fuck, Hogan's coming, man. Hogan. Like when I was 14, I didn't know who was coming, but now even though I knew who was coming this time, the anticipation was still there. So it holds up. My overall is a 7.5. watch the show. Don't just skip to the end. Listen to the commentators and the way that they put it over, and you'll be thoroughly satisfied. But Nick, I wanted to surprise you with something.
Ooh.
So we always do. We've done a couple votes for a show, and that's how we ended up with Greed, because my Instagram followers are fucking dickheads. And they didn't want us to watch the show where Sting descended from the rafters down to a Macho Man who had taken the show hostage at the United Center.
After he just came back from that contract dispute that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And we've done Boys' Choice, and we've all agreed to it. And we've also done my birthday pick. But Nick, being a senior tenured DSR employee, I am going to give you the pick for our show in late June that we will be doing. I don't want to put you on the spot right now. We don't have to name it on the show. We could always announce it on the page. But if you have something that you've been wanting to do, let's fucking do it, dude.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's do it. I'm going to have to think, because, you did choose a very good one here. Donnie, thank you so much, by the way, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Donnie.
The whole time, and everyone else here. I don't know which one yet. We could probably throw this one out there to the user base, except for the last one, because that one sucked.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm kind of feeling, I see 3 screens here. What if we did 3 rings and talk about World War III?
Yeah!
Yes!
Yeah!
Yes!
Which one, Nick?
The first one's got a lot attached to it, but...
I just watched the first one, ironically, a few weeks ago.
Also, 96 also has a lot at stake in there, leading into, all the NWO stuff. But honestly, I think World War III 1995 is where we should go next.
Yeah!
Let's go.
Nick, you just fucked yourself.
Good.
You're going to have to do the participants and the eliminations.
Oh, baby. I already got the list ready to go. I made it a long time previously.
All 59 eliminations. All of them.
Oh, boy.
Let me tell you, this is a thing that I sometimes do when I hang out and watch it with some of my real life friends. I will have them mute the TV, and I will go over and tell them every single guy that comes out there. I don't care if it's one of the Armstrongs. I don't care if it's freaking Mike Winter from the power plant. I will tell everyone who it is coming out.
Bobby eating the cookies, Mike Penis. So, all right. So I think we have agreed that the next show in June, at the end of June, will be the 1995 World War III pay-per-view.
Yes.
But guys, listen, I had a tremendous time. Almost 3 hours. This was great. This needed 3 hours. It needed it. But Nick, if you... Yeah, oh no, I'm not even thinking about SmackDown right now. I'm going to go watch the new episode of Rick and Morty again, because it was fantastic.
That's the way to do it. Shout out
Nick,
to John for covering SmackDown for us.
Yeah, if you want to take us out, Nick, in the grand fashion that you usually do, I would appreciate it.
All right. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us here. Like Max said, we are going to talk about World War III 1995 next month. I can't wait. I'm really excited for this, guys. But hey, you see it down here at Neekdown. You can find me on Instagram at Neekdown, and I'm also on Facebook, Nick LaRocco. You'll see me sharing stuff all the time on the Dirt Sheet Radio page. So please give me a follow. We're so close to 60,000 followers on Facebook, so let's get there. Please, I appreciate it. And it's so cool to be able to talk to you guys on there. But Robby, where's everyone going to find you on the social media?
And obviously, guys, you guys will find me on Facebook. I'm commenting on DSR posts, on John Espadara's posts, on Neek's post. You guys will be able to find me there easily, and you can click it. And honestly, my Instagram is most likely right there, because I share it and mesh it with my Instagram account there. So essentially, you guys can try to find me there as well. And honestly, that's where you can find me.
All right, Mac, where are we going to find you?
I'm at Curbside Hero on Instagram. It's a bunch of letters and numbers, but just type in Curb and then maybe Mac, and you'll find me. And if you don't, I don't know. Just don't follow me. Then I don't give a shit.
Perfect. Hey, make sure you also follow and keep up with Dirt Sheet Radio because we are always on. Of course, Monday night for Raw, Tuesday for NXT. Wednesday, we've got the flagship Dirt Sheet Radio program where we talk about AEW Dynamite and so much more happening in professional wrestling. Thursday, you got TNA. Friday, you sometimes have SmackDown, but hey, this is Bash at the Beach 1996. This just has to take priority over that. I'm sorry, but this is the wrestling show. But we also have on the weekends different things like 3NT, The Boys. Of course, sometimes we'll have CJ and Tyler with The Dub, the wrestling roundup for the weekend, and you've got a lot of other things too. You like anime? Hey, guess what? We got the Otaku podcast, and there are so many other great programs that you can find on Dirt Sheet Radio, and of course, the Dirt Sheet Radio channel itself. But for Mack Burns, for Robby Rourke, and for Nick Aracco, we are going to be saying thank you, we love you, and we will see you next month for World War III. And I gotta say this, just like Tony Schiavone, Hulk Hogan, you can go to hell.
Fuck the Hulk Hogan.